So, do you have anyone you like? Step by step, Robin began her divination. Only happy people had a future. Unfortunate people were destined to lose their future. All glory and hope wouldn't belong to unfortunate people. To truly capture that tiny miracle, people entangled in misfortune needed to work hundreds of times harder than others. Never give up hope until the last moment, which was the only belief that unfortunate people could have. The person who didn't have this belief was just a walking corpse even though he was still alive. Robin's whine represented that it had not given up hope and was still emitting its own voice. As the person who could hear this voice, she must accomplish the Robin's hope. The person I like, Yunshi muttered to himself, but did not notice that at his side, Golden Crow Princess's eyes were burning with curiosity. White Lotus breathing was almost stopped. She looked at Yunshi's mouth without blinking, trying to read the name he would mutter out. Red Lotus doubtfully looked around and felt strange. What's happening? In this world, the people I like, Yunshi didn't notice that the atmosphere around him suddenly changed, because he was worried about how to answer the mysterious ogre's question. In the sky, somehow one after another morning glow flew above their heads. People stared at the strange clouds that had never appeared in the sky before, and many people even knelt and kowtowed. May, who do you like? Golden Crow Princess asked word for word, as if the answer from Yunshi could determine many worlds' fates. May, tell me, is the name Hua Hua? White Lotus narrowed her eyes and said the name of her biggest opponent. If Yunshi admitted, she wouldn't feel too surprised. A childhood sweetheart was a strong opponent, but not an invincible opponent. Even though she was unparalleled in battle, there were too many weaknesses in her character. A few days ago, White Lotus deceived this biggest rival, by letting her take part in a special trial, so that she could stay together with May these last days. Everything is because of the choice of fate, isn't it? Actually, Yunshi blushed for a while. Speaking of the people he liked, the first name that emerged in his mind was Hua Hua. However, he hadn't seen Hua Hua recently, which made him feel lonely. She was the bright sun in his eyes. If he could only live to 18 years old, he would propose to Hua Hua at all costs and forget everything else. She was his first love, his childhood sweetheart. She had taken so many places in Yunshi's heart, and when he was still in the small town, he had even decided to travel after Hua Hua left, in case that in the familiar environment, he saw the thing and thought of the person. Hua Hua. Is that the name? Robin looked at the maid strangely. Hua Hua, the name didn't sound like a man's name. Well, I like my childhood sweetheart, Hua Hua. Since White Lotus had asked, Yunshi wasn't going to keep hiding his real feeling. He directly admitted it. Even though he had married millions of brides, even though he had made a lot of mistakes, his first love was still his first love, his childhood sweetheart was still his childhood sweetheart. He never forgot Hua Hua for a moment. After all, she was the most beautiful sun in his heart. So, there is another rival. Suddenly, the young Golden Crow Princess' eyes became serious, and the name Hua Hua had been deeply engraved into her mind. Hua Hua, the childhood sweetheart, is really a strong rival. White Lotus squinted. She was glad that she had deceived Hua Hua to leave, otherwise, she wouldn't have any chance to date May. Apparently, as the prince's lover, she had to fight fiercely with the prince's childhood sweetheart. This war had just begun. Then I will predict the future of you and your lover, Robin said with confidence. It was just an easy love fortune. After all, she had obtained the two sides' name and knew that they were childhood sweethearts. Wait, Yunshi looked at the mysterious augur and suddenly had an ominous feeling. The guardian of the balance, the observer of all things, the watcher at the end of the hourglass of time, in the name of me, praise you. I would like to pay all the prices I can pay to see the future. Tell me, if the childhood sweetheart of the person in front of me can get what he wants. Robin predicted and sought answers from the three saints in the void. The guardian of the balance, the observer of all things, the watcher at the end of the hourglass of time, the three saints were not gods, nor demons, nor any living beings in the real world, but a special concept, representing the different ways of manifesting the truth of all things. She sought the answer from the three non-existing saints, but most times, if the answer was accurate, it depended on luck. This time, Robin's luck was very good, at least she thought so. Because she had seen some scenes after 3 seconds. Childhood sweetheart, sword, stars falling. What a strong female swordsman, who is she? Childhood sweetheart, golden light, golden swords, and a garden with a giant obelisk. Well, how come there are 2 different futures? Childhood sweetheart, golden branches, jade leaves, blood stamens, blooming flowers between the heaven and the earth. Isn't this the 10 Leaves Alliance? Childhood sweetheart, countless mysterious war machines, and 1, 2, 3, more than 10 huge shadows. Wait. Is there something wrong? How could this be her childhood sweetheart? By the way, how many childhood sweethearts does she have? 4 different scenes, 4 different futures. In the first future, the girl with a huge sword was wildly chopping off the stars. With each brandish of her sword, tens of millions of stars would fall down. In the second future, the golden sword turned into a sparkle covering the world, opening up a chaotic world. Light and darkness, sky and earth were separated by this sword. With a golden crown on her head, the girl looked like an invincible god. In the third future, a giant divine tree spread through the endless stars. Golden branches, jade leaves and blood stamens were all parts of this divine tree. Countless spirits crowded around this divine tree, singing and praising it. With the crown of elf, a girl was sitting on the tree. In the fourth future, a tidal wave of steel was moving forward. Black anti-cross flags were floating in the air, spirits lodging in crystals and a blonde-haired girl were ravaging the entire sky. Behind them were endless huge dark shadows. Numerous gods fell at their feet, witnessing the arrival of a new era. Why? It's supposed to be just a common love divination. Why do I see such terrible futures? Any occurrence of these 4 futures would become an event that could shock the entire endless gods' domains. And these 4 futures were connected with the black-haired maid in front of Robin. Who are your childhood sweethearts? What kind of monsters are they? Robin's face turned pale. She looked at Yunxi and wanted to say something, but suddenly, more and more terrible scenes flooded into her eyes. On the snow-covered land, a girl was leading a powerful legend-ranked knight regiment, fighting against the army of the demons. Walking on the battlefield, a god of war was killing. In the endless darkness, a princess ignited the lamp of hope. A rabbit-eared pharmacist was saving the world with various drugs. A singing girl was bringing hope to the depleted land by using her song. A dragon girl was standing on the top of a dragon's nest, and behind her was a huge group of dragons. It was hard to believe that these futures were all connected with the maid in front of her. She herself was like the center of a network, connecting countless futures. Each of the futures was a miracle, a legend. The vast net didn't just cover a sword domain nor a god's domains, but the endless stars. Stop. Stop, I can't look at these. The more she saw, the more uneasy Robin became. Why can I see such things? Why is this love divination involved with so many terrible futures? It was not something she, a hero-ranked augur, could withstand. Even for a legend-ranked augur, it wasn't possible for them to see these futures in a love divination. No, not that she saw the future, but that she was entangled in it. Why am I? Is today the last day of my life? To see so many futures, the price she would pay could only be with her life and even her soul. The people who peeped into destiny would pay the price of violating the rules. The more detailed and realistic the future was, the more expensive the price the peeper would pay. Am I dying? I just wanted to do a simple love divination. Master, she's dying. Mayer's voice sounded quietly in Yunxi's ear, which really frightened him. Gee. Why? Yunxi looked at the mysterious ogre's pale face. He didn't know why, but he could feel that her vitality was declining rapidly. It seemed that she was dying. It was the price of predicting your future. She has overdrawn her life. She has already reached a certain critical point, and she still tried to predict your future. She is just looking for her own way of death. Tisk tisk. Mayer looked at Robin and shook her head. How dare you to predict the future of the Starchild? Even Ouroboros couldn't do it, you are just murdering yourself. This was only a simple love divination. If you went further and really saw Master's 4 ex-girlfriends, even your soul would immediately turn into ashes. What can I do? Looking at this unfortunate augur, Yunxi felt guilty. He himself didn't expect that predicting his future would make the augur pay the price with her life. It's very easy. Give her one of your seeds, Master. At least, it can keep her alive. Mayer secretly laughed. The reason why she did not stop the foolish augur predicting for her master was that she was waiting for this moment. Although her appearance wasn't too excellent, she could see a part of the Starchild's futures, which meant that she was really a genius of divination. Just in time too, the Starwing Knights needed an augur. Okay, let me use it. Yunxi didn't doubt Mayer's words. He directly activated a seed and planted it into her body through his hand that was held by Robin's hand. G.A. Robin's body quivered slightly and found that her cold body was rapidly warming up. Just at that moment, she thought she had stepped into the netherworld and she had even seen countless flowers blooming in the netherworld. They were the flowers that only the dead could see. The flowers bloomed in the garden where she first met with the robins. That was to say, she died again just now. Why did she say, again? Because she had actually died once a long time ago. It was the robins who brought her back from the netherworld, and after that, she could never be separated from these birds. If she could choose, she would never have gone on the road of the blood stamen. Unfortunately, she had no choice. If she didn't choose to be with these robins, she could no longer survive. Even though she was so unfortunate, she still hoped to continue to live, even if there was only 0.00001% possibility, she would not give up. The dead robins coexisted with her in this way, returning from the netherworld to the real world. Why, looking at Yunxi's hand that was being held in her hand, Robin just wanted to open her mouth, and suddenly a rattle appeared in her mind. Ding! The first future she saw, the future belonging to Yunxi's first childhood sweetheart, broke open, turning into numerous fragments of crystals and completely disappearing from Robin's soul. As if it was an initial signal, the future of the second girl also broke. The third future broke. The fourth future broke. No, it wasn't that these futures had broken and disappeared, but that Robin's soul wasn't strong enough to carry the information contained in these futures. She wasn't qualified to peep into these futures now, even though these futures were not 100% likely to happen. Ultimately, she simply didn't have the ability to observe these futures. So, why could she see them? If Yunxi looked up at the sky now, he would find several small stars hanging shyly in a corner of the sky, blinking quietly. One after another, the mirrors of the future disappeared from Robin's mind. She couldn't even remember any of them now. Finally, there was only one mirror of the future that still existed in her mind. Because the future in this mirror was the only future she saw by using her own ability. What happened? Because she couldn't remember any of the futures before, Robin had forgotten what terrible scenes she had seen. Now, in front of her, there was only one mirror of the future. Her subconsciousness was telling her that this mirror was very important, she must open it and see what future it reflected. Her instinct was warning her that she'd better not open that mirror. Now, she should leave the mirror as soon as possible or she would inevitably be involved in misery. Don't open it, don't open it. It's a grave, an abyss, a curse. If you want to be more miserable, open it and die. 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 The birds on Robin's shoulders threatened and whined. Their euphemistic and beautiful voices became panicky. Robin hesitated for a moment, and finally touched the mirror in his soul with her fingertips. Because she had no choice. Once the divination was completed, no matter what the result was, the future had been determined. This result wouldn't change because of any person's will. At least, she herself didn't have the power to change it. If it was a good future, then she could let out a sigh of relief. If it was a bad future, at least, she could look for ways to make some changes to avoid the worst results. The conclusion was that human curiosity was irresistible. No matter whether the future was good or bad, no one could refuse not to look at it. This was not only the original sin of human beings, but of all intelligent creatures too. Since it was the future she predicted, as an augur, she must reveal this future, at least, read it with her own eyes. The moment Robin's fingertips touched the mirror's surface, the mirror rippled gently like the ripples on water. Then the future appeared in front of her in the most vivid way. Chirp! Chirp! The sound of cicadas blotted out the sky and covered up the earth, and the weather was too hot for a person in a thick red cloak. Even though she was at the hero rank, her body couldn't ignore the heat. It's so hot. Wiping the sweat off her forehead, Robin sat on the steps of an unknown shrine in an ungraceful manner. Her whole body felt like it was being steamed in a steamer, and her body was steaming hot. Did you see May, little Robin? The rabbit-eared girl carrying a basket of herbs, came down the stairs and spoke to Robin, who was breathing heavily. Who is she? Why do I know her? And why am I in the future of this love divination? Isn't it common sense that augurs would never appear in the future they predicted? Robin looked at this future of herself in doubt. She could see from some small details that this was not a future to many years from now. It was probably a future of just 1 year later. The angle of the sun and the environment around her were consistent with the data of the White Lotus Sword domain in her mind. That was to say, this future, in fact, happened in the White Lotus Sword domain after a year. May. I just saw her, she went to the bathroom. On the stairs, Robin stretched out with a comfortable look of, no one could make me leave these cool stairs even if the world would be destroyed in the next moment. Why can you show such a natural and happy smile on your face? What happened to this me in this future 1 year later? It's too hot. The sun shone through the shadows of the tree, casting light spots on the ground of the small shrine. Even though she was hiding under the shady stairs that weren't exposed to the sun, Robin couldn't stand the intense heat. Normally, she would take off the bright red cloak at this time. After all, it was summer and she wasn't in the desert. Unfortunately, Robin really couldn't take it off. In a sense, this cloak was actually a part of her body and a carrier of the Robin's soul. It was equivalent to her eternally bound soul equipment. It was her god weapon, Blood Robin's cloak. Of course, it was still possible to take off this equipment for a short time, but she had no other clothes except the necessary underwear. No matter how hot it was, she couldn't accept only wearing her underwear in front of others, which was too embarrassing for her. Little Robin, is May there? Robin felt like she had heard this question more than once today. This time, it was a girl wearing platinum armor. Her breastplate engraved with sacred cross lines that stood tall on the front of her breastplate, making people feel hot and seductive. She's supposed to be taking a bath. I saw her walking into the bathroom. Answering this question, Robin suddenly felt as if she should take a bath too. Thank you. Here you are. Huayu handed Robin an ice cream, which she had just bought. Ice cream. Robin grabbed it without saying anything and licked the luxurious goods in the hot sunshine with her little tongue. Such peace. Such a leisurely scene. Robin looked at her defenseless, cheerful future self, showing a deep doubtful expression on her face. I'm entangled by the Robin and destined to be unfortunate. How can I show such a smile in this future? Why did the rabbit-eared girl and the night girl accept her and talk to her in such a natural way? What happened 1 year later? What made me take off my disguise? What happened to the assassination target I chose? Numerous questions emerged in Robin's mind, but she couldn't find answers from her future self, who just walked into the small shrine while sucking the ice cream in her mouth. Before she had taken a few steps, she suddenly stopped and cocked her ears. The Robin in the real world opened her eyes wide, because this posture meant that her future self was entering her unique combat posture. Die! 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 The bloody birds sprang up with their wings and made the cry of blood that only Robin could hear. You can't see, you can't listen. If you look, you'll rot your eyes, if you listen, you'll rot your ears. Close your eyes and cover your ears. There are terrible monsters, and people who see monsters will be eaten by them. It seemed that the future Robin also heard this voice. She hesitated for a while, but eventually walked to the shrine. In the guest room of the shrine, there was a small room with the fragrance of green herbs, and there was a hushing voice that could make people blush. I'm going to have to make medicine, May. Ah. Robin looked quietly through the crack in the door. The rabbit-eared girl who had just been carrying a basket had been pressed into the corner of the wall. Her snow-white skin was covered with drops of fragrant sweat, her scattered black hair draped over her shoulders, her delicate face showed both excitement and fatigue. Her cheeks were glittering and ruddy, her mouth slightly open, and her discombobulated eyes were immersed in a chaotic pleasure. Her white and delicate feet had been grasped by someone, and on her delicate skin, there were several shallow scratch marks. Her delicate toes stretched straight, and the light in the room glistened on her lovely, rabbit-like toes, reflecting an attractive glow. Apparently, she was being forced by someone, but her red face was full of contented joy. Her beautiful eyes gazed at the man who took off her shoes and socks and kneaded her delicate, fragrant feet. Why? It's her. May. Robin looked at the black-haired maid in surprise. She never thought that it would be like this. Whoa. I'm not ready for it yet. Lulu's eyes closed shyly, and her delicate nose was covered with sweat. Her attractive lips were gasping with a faint fragrance. Ah. Hey. With all sorts of gentle, sexual cries, the little rabbit Lulu's body exuded a soft and moist charming luster. What the hell is this future? Why am I, a top-class killer, shamelessly peeping at such a scene? What's wrong with the world? Looking at the scene in front of her, Robin felt that her world outlook was collapsing. A sweet and pitiful voice was echoing in the narrow room of the shrine. It wasn't the future she wanted to see. Why would she see such a ridiculous, unreasonable future, like a sweet dream of a warm summer fantasy? The blood Robin didn't belong in this world. Bearing the unfortunate curse, Robin's hands had been contaminated with countless beings' blood, because she was one of the top 10 killers of the 10 Leaves Alliance. She had assassinated numerous people. Even her name, Bloody Robin, had become a taboo in the dark world. This future, such a future, It won't be my future, my future, my future. How could it be so happy? The robin in the real world gazed at the robin in this future, who was peeping through the door at the sexual scene in the room and didn't even notice that the ice cream had melted in her hand. Gazing at herself, she showed a sad look on her face. Sometime, the divination would let her see an insane future that would never happen. Undoubtedly, this future was one of the futures that had nearly zero chances of happening. This was not so much a future as a delusion. Ah, whoa, not there, no, woo, woo, the bullied little rabbit emitted a voice which could make all men feel pity and thrilled. No, not only men, but also women. The robin in this future bit off the remaining melted ice cream. She couldn't help but emit a strange voice from her mouth, and her body feebly leaned against the wall. Little Robin, oh. A familiar voice rang in Robin's ear, and then became silent for an instant. Beside the robin in this future, the leader of the Starwing Knights, Huayu looked at the door which had opened a gap and quietly listened to the voice from inside of the room. Her face turned red little by little. It looked as if time had stagnated for this moment. Only the lovely whisper of the little rabbit in the room was still telling about her misfortune, or luck if you would. Huayu closed her eyes. Her shoulders trembled slightly, and then she sighed quietly. Little Robin, don't tell anyone about this secret. It's not May's fault. As the leader of the Starwing Knights, I am also responsible. It was her responsibility to keep the biggest secret of the Starwing Knights. Well, it seemed that this secret would be disclosed sooner or later. She knows about it, and she may have found it more than once. Are they all aware of this? Looking at this scene, the robin in the real world was dumbfounded. How much tolerance do you have for this black-haired maid named May? Is she really just a maid? You just joined the Starwing Knights not long ago. Maybe you still don't understand it. Sitting quietly beside Robin, while you took out her ice cream and handed over it to Robin, as if she was planning to use this as a hush money. We and May, we have a special relationship. Starwing Knights, the robin in the real world instantly remembered this name. Is this the organization I joined in this future? I see. This name was very strange. Didn't the whole of the knights have even a single male? The robin in this future licked her ice cream which was about to melt completely, then licked the new ice cream from Huayu. Her ears rose back quietly and listened to the sweet words of the summer. Neither the Heaven Roads Palace nor the 10 Leaves Alliance would teach this kind of knowledge. Little rabbit, she is the most special one, she's very good-natured, so she doesn't refuse May every time. So, if this happens again, would you please help me to cover it up? Anyway, you are one of the strongest hero-ranked members of the Starwing Knights. I'm just one of the strongest. In that case, the Starwing Knights has more than one hero-ranked members, and it's obvious that it's just a newly established knight. From the point of view of a killer, the robin in the real world gave a high rating to the Starwing Knights. However, why did I join the Starwing Knights? I'm a killer of the 10 Leaves Alliance and a member of the Heaven Roads Palace. I just came to the White Lotus Sword Domain to perform an assassination mission. Why would I join this strange Starwing Knights and become so familiar with this golden-haired girl and the little rabbit in the room? After merging with Robin's, she had become a moving disaster. Most people around her would naturally meet misfortune. How could such a girl have any close friends? If she is really my friend in this future, shouldn't I keep my distance from her? She knew that she would only bring misfortune to her friends. Well, I'll keep it secret. Actually, I was also accidentally, the robin in this future muttered and mumbled and even blushed. Gee. Accidentally. What happened accidentally? Hello. What happened to this me in this future? Oh my, you. May. Huayu rubbed her forehead and began to take out a small notebook, updating the list of May poisoning in the Starwing Knights. Her holy beetle didn't record it, so it must have happened at a place she didn't know about. Essentially, once May put her hand to the members of the Starwing Knights, none of them could escape. Woo! The poor little rabbit was still being bullied and emitted lovely sounds in the room, as if her mouth was blocked by something. Outside the door, Robin licked the ice cream softly. As for Huayu, she quietly released the holy beetle from her bodice. Chirp! Chirp! The sound of cicadas echoed around this small shrine. The temperature seemed to be getting hotter. Such a peaceful future, is it true? Is this the future I longed for in my heart? The guardian of the balance, the observer of all things, the watcher at the end of the hourglass of time, is it my delusion that distorted the result of divination and let me see such a future? Can I really get such a future after being surrounded by robins? Standing next to herself in the future, Robin fell into deep thought. The future can be changed, but such a future. She took a last glance at herself sitting in the shattered shrine, blushing and licking the sweet ice cream. A complex expression appeared on Robin's face, and her body began to disappear little by little in this summer-like fantastic future. Will such a future really come true? With a trace of expectation and a trace of confusion, Robin finished the love divination. What's the result? Yunshi looked carefully at the mysterious augur in front of him. Will his future with Huahua be happy? Are you asking about your future with your childhood sweetheart? Robin, who had not yet fully awakened from the sweet and shameful future, looked at the black-haired maid with a subtle forced smile. Yes. Yunshi gazed at the mysterious augur's face with expectations. From Mayer's judgment, this was a talented, strong augur. If she hadn't observed part of his future, she would not have been injured. Therefore, it was his gift to help her use a seed. I think you're going to become popular in the future. Robin tried to think over her sentences. She wasn't just popular, but had captured everyone's heart in the future she just saw. Even she herself was one of the victims. No, I won't let this future come true. She indeed enjoyed this peaceful and sweet future with close friends, but she had no intention of joining the Starwing Knights, and even be bullied like the little rabbit in the room in the future. Well, she had decided to stay away from shrines from now on. She would never fall into the black-haired maid's hands. As for the maid's poor childhood sweetheart, based on what she saw in the future, her childhood sweetheart was destined to be a loser. Is it true? Seeing the mysterious augur hesitating in front of him, Yunshi blushed. Become popular, isn't this what happened in those days when Maeve practiced the closed-mouth zen? Isn't it what happened when I was playing Star Go on the Starry Sky chessboard? Yes, watch out. Don't be too reckless. Robin found her heart was beating faster and faster, more than usual. What happened? What happened to my body? Just by holding the maid's hand and feeling each other's body temperature, something invisible jumped in Robin's chest. It seemed that both her body and heart were making cheers. You are dying. You are dying. You are dying. When you look at the abyss is looking at you too. You can't look back, girl. Warning, warning, the grave is in front of you. The grave is in front of you. Red alert. Red alert. Red alert. The birds on Robin's shoulders cried desperately. They covered their eyes with their wings, as if they could not bear to look directly at the tragedy that would happen next. What's wrong with me? Feeling her heart beating faster and faster, Robin recalled the scene she saw in the shrine. Her cheeks became hotter and hotter. The tender sobbing voice, the small white feet, and the helpless appearance lingered in her mind. For a moment, she imagined that she had experienced something similar. It was clear that that future hadn't happened at all, but everything was so vivid in front of her eyes. Between her lips and tongue, there was still the lingering flavor of ice cream, and even the sweat was about to flow down from her forehead. Who killed the robin? Sparrows, sparrows, damn sparrows. She is already helpless. Noticing the abnormal state in Robin's body, the birds of the nightmare world whined together. The symptoms of May poisoning had started. Whoa. It's strange, what's wrong with my body? Since she returned from the nightmare world and merged with the robins, she had never felt so light. After leaving the nightmare world with robins, she had cursed her fate countless times. Why is it me? Why did I survive, but had to face the fate that was worse than death? How unjust this fate is. Why did I have to choose Bloodstamen? There was no other reason, it was simply because apart from Bloodstamen, there was no place for her in any corner of the world. How many nights did she open her eyes and think everything was just a nightmare? But she could never go back. It was her destiny to accept the robin's power, to coexist with the robin, to walk in the endless god's domains with blood and killing. The robin was killed, instinctively chasing the breath of death, and as the robins hissed, she had witnessed endless death over and over again. As she watched death, the aura of the abyss in her body gradually eroded her body and mind. She was living, but unable to enjoy the beauty of life. She even began to regret that she had accepted the robins and returned from the nightmare world. Why is it now? Feeling the strange beating of her heart, Robin was at a loss, like a lost child. Her heartbeat, at the day she came back from the nightmare world, was only about half of the speed compared to other people. This was price she must pay. If not with the robins, she would have died long ago. However, as the weaker part of the partners, her body was not strong enough to resist the robin's power. Every time she witnessed his death, her body was closer to the robin's. Initially, she was not aware of this, thinking that she could still be in the human world like normal people. Soon, she found that her sense of existence was getting lower and lower. Many times she had completed the tasks, even the publishers of the tasks forgot what she looked like. It was like a deepening nightmare. She found that the cost of reversing life and death was almost unbearable. Ironically, everyone thought that this was because of her murderous secret skill, the unfortunate prophecy of the robin, and called her a once-in-a-thousand-years genius. The lower her heart rate and sense of existence were, the higher her ranking in the 10 Leaves Alliance was. When her heartbeat reduced to 1/3 of common heart rate, she entered the top 100 list of the killers of the 10 Leaves Alliance. When her heartbeat reduced to 1/5 of common heart rate, she entered the top 100 list of the killers of the Eastern God's domain. The last time, she killed a poet, and at that time, her heart rate reduced to 1/10. The poet was just a mortal, but his admirers even contained legend-ranked females. No one could find any trace of murder from his death, because he died in a duel with his rival. Unfortunately, the blessing of fate left him this time, because Robin was looking at him, witnessing the duel. After that, Robin's ranking immediately raised to top 10 on the list of killers. Robin's power was increasing as she witnessed death. The death of the poet brought Robin a stronger and more desperate power. Robin had a presentiment that if she continued to witness death, one day her heart would stop beating completely, and her blood would coagulate in her body. She would be in a state of neither dying nor living. Yes, she should have known it a long time ago, because that was the price of the robin's power. That day, when she fell into the pool of blood, looking up at the sky that didn't belong to human beings, and praying to all existences who could hear her voice. God, Buddha, even if you are a devil, I don't want to die. As long as I can live, I will pay the price. God didn't respond to her, nor did Buddha hear her voice. Only the bloody birds came and wandered on her body. At that time, she was actually dead, but her soul was still wandering around her body, unwilling to leave, looking at the hole through her chest and crying. The bloody birds saw her soul, asked her, and tempted her, "Do you want to continue living? Do you want to see the world again? Then accept us, accept our strength, our desire, our journey." Who killed the robin? It's sparrows, sparrows. Take us to find sparrows, revenge, revenge, revenge. Only blood can bring us rest. She promised, with nothing, that she had no choice but these robins. From then on, a girl who had dreamed of sunshine disappeared. A blood robin was born. Dong! 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 What was this feeling of obtaining a long-forgotten treasure? My voice, little by little, she obtained the heartbeat she once had again. The girl cried with joy. Just the sound of her heartbeat had brought her infinite hope. Perhaps, I really have an opportunity to meet a different future. Even though I have gone this far and to this extent, do I still have a chance to obtain happiness? Oh. Dong! 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 It wasn't just her delusion. She clenched her fists and did nothing. She could feel that there was a heat flow bursting out in her body. It was like a tiny tender leaf stubbornly drilled out from the frozen ground. It was changing something. Something that shouldn't appear has come. There should be no hope. If you are deceived by this, there is no remedy. Girl, what you see is not a hope, but a trap. Liar, liar, liar. Go away, go away, go away, go away. The birds were so noisy today that they looked like little girls who had been robbed of their beloved toys. It's a miracle, the miracle appears. Robin looked up and looked again at the black-haired maid. The more she observed, the more remarkable the maid was. Her long black hair looked as if it was with an incredible charm any person would be addicted at a glance. She had a perfect, quiet and gentle face. Just standing there, she exuded a sense of elegance and mystery. Even the unknown ornaments hanging on the two sides of her hair looked very attractive. Hey, wait a minute. Sun-like smile. Perfect long hair. Beautiful jewelry-like ornaments. This. Isn't she? Comparing the age of the black-haired maid with that of the golden-haired princess beside her, it seemed that Robin had found some truth. Was it her that the robins predicted? Why didn't I notice it at first? Age of 16. Perfect black hair. Warm smile. The black-haired maid was clearly closer to the robin's prediction than the golden-haired princess. The princess above all princesses, the prince above all princes. Looking at Yunxi, Robin imagined him in a man's suit for a moment. Compared with the golden-haired princess who looked only 7 or 8 years old, it was obvious that the black-haired maid was closer to the image of a prince if she wore a man's clothes. So, from the very beginning, she had mistaken her goal. The biggest suspect who killed the disciple of Heaven Road's palace was her. More or less, she could imagine the reason. That disciple of Heaven Road's palace had a bad reputation actually. There were rumors that his relationship with his animal friend, the green hippo, was somewhat abnormal. It was not surprising to know that a person whose mind had been distorted to make many mistakes. Well, is there anything else? Being looked at by Robin with a complicated, confused and even suspicious look, Yunxi felt himself like a criminal. They just pulled each other's hands, but he could interpret 1,000 different meanings from her eyes. We meet for the first time today, right? However, her adaptability to his seed seemed remarkable. From Yunxi's point of view, the seed of life that had just been planted seemed to have taken root and sprouted, trying to expand inside her body. It seemed that the small seed was stubbornly resisting some unknown power, and because of this, the potential of this seed had been maximized, and the power transmitted to Yunxi was unexpectedly strong. Moreover, unlike all the members of the Starwing Knights, the power of the mysterious augur carried a tinge of cold, which was incompatible with the warm breath of the members of the Starwing Knights. Yunxi didn't realize that this was actually the power of curse from the nightmare world, the power that could kill anyone without a sign. To Robin, she could find no way to resist the nightmare power, but to Yunxi, it was of no use at all. His body was blessed by the stars, as the star child, it couldn't do any harm to him. At this moment, the resuscitation of Robin's heartbeat was also due to this. The curse that mankind absolutely couldn't bear was dispelled by the seed Yunshi planted for her. That was what the bloody birds were dissatisfied with. Their hard-won toy, their vehicle used to travel in the real world, was stolen. Do you believe in fate? Do you believe that the future is doomed? Robin gazed at Yunshi's eyes and asked in an unquestionable voice. The answer would determine the rest of her life. Fate, it can be changed, Yunshi never doubted this. It was in order to change his fate, change the future, that he would inevitably be torn to pieces by his 4 ex-girlfriends, so that he could constantly strive in the past and would continue to strive for it in the future. Fate is something that can be changed. This was Yunshi's persistence, and also the only thing left in his blank memory of his previous life. I believe in fate, and believe in future. Looking at Yunshi, Robin smiled and made a decision that would change her life. If what she saw in that future really had a tiny possibility to come true, she would be desperate to catch up and strive for this. Your future, it's extraordinary, prophecy. Maybe it doesn't work for you, even so. I still want to tell you. Please treat the girl who likes you well. Never be too rude. Her prediction is very accurate. Looking at Robin's back in the distance, White Lotus praised. The augurs of a mysterious prediction, sometimes they can really surprise me. Except for her behavior of shaking Yunshi's hands for too long. Yes, I will be very popular in the future. Yunshi didn't know whether to laugh or cry at this moment. He has 4 terrible ex-girlfriends. If he was too popular in the future, how bad would his life become? When he left the small town, he was prepared to go to some remote god's domains where his ex-girlfriend's apostles couldn't find him. Unfortunately, being found and stopped by his invincible childhood sweetheart, his escape plan was over before it started. Well, it's very accurate. May, you are already very popular now. White Lotus squinted her eyes. The girls of the Starwing Knights and his childhood sweethearts, well, there were a lot of rivals. Nevertheless, all of them would eventually become losers. White Lotus had seen the future. I really don't know what this mysterious prediction is for. Is this really a prediction of the future? Red Lotus didn't believe the mysterious augur's prediction at all. She only believed her sister's predictions. If the calculations were wrong, it was absolutely not White Lotus' fault, but because there wasn't sufficient information. In a word, White Lotus wouldn't be wrong. If she was wrong, it must be the world's fault. No matter how many enemies there are, I'll burn them all. Golden Crow Princess was a little jealous and made a terrifying speech. If one looked carefully, one could see flames burning in the deep side of her golden ruby-like pupils. Well, it was just a love divination, it was just a divination. Yunshi was sweating. As he racked his brains trying to change the topic, a familiar aura rose into the sky and even formed a red pillar of light. Someone is leveling up. White Lotus and Red Lotus raised their heads together, looking at the red pillar of light rising into the sky. It's not a common person. Red Lotus clearly felt the power contained in this pillar of light. It was powerful and even gave her an enigmatic feeling. In that direction, it's the Battle Gods Championship Contest. White Lotus pinched her finger and calculated. Today is indeed the day of the qualifying competition of the Battle Gods Championship Contest. Roar! Next to the pillar of light, another powerful, steel-like aura burst out. Looks like the qualifying competition is interesting. Why don't you go and have a look? White Lotus showed a mysterious smile towards Yunshi. Maybe you can meet some people you know there. Yunshi nodded. He didn't know many people. Who would take part in the qualifying competition of the Battle Gods Championship Contest? Hua Hua. He hadn't seen her lately. did she go to take part in the qualifying competition of the Battle Gods Championship contest. As the largest martial arts championship contest in the Endless Gods domains, the battles on the championship contest were far more fierce than ordinary people's imagination. There were thousands of battles every day in different gods' domains. The qualifying competition was a stage for the newcomers of the Battle Gods Championship contest. Many of the strongest players had come to the fore in this stage and become world-famous masters step by step. From the mortal rank to the hero rank, any contestant could join in the qualifying contest. After winning enough matches, they could take part in the ranking competition. Of course, legend-ranked beings didn't need to participate in the qualifying competition, they could directly go to take part in the ranking competition, and they would absolutely not encounter any hero-ranked opponents. Whether it was the qualifying competition or the ranking competition, nothing was dependent on race or origin, but only on strength. As the Seven Towers witnessed, the two sides gambled on all they had. As long as there were the projections of the towers, there must be the entrance of the Battle Gods Championship contest. Originally, White Lotus Sword Domain was not qualified to apply for the entrance of the Battle Gods Championship contest. However, the invincible Battle God was from this sword domain, therefore, the Battle Gods Championship contest was naturally opening to this small sword domain. However, the contestants from the White Lotus Sword domain weren't too strong, most of them were only at the mortal rank, there were rarely the battles between hero-ranked contestants. Today, an exception appeared. Boom! 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 The tremendous sound was still echoing in the sky. More and more people had been attracted by the rising pillar of light and flocked to the Battle Gods Championship contest. At this moment, in the Battle Gods Championship contest, two figures were confronting each other. There was a great difference between the two people. One side was a giant man who was nearly 2.5 meters tall and had strange reddish skin and lion-like hair. The giant man had huge locks on his shoulders and neck, and his hands were wearing a pair of steel gloves up to 0.5 meters thick, which made him look like a giant beast armed with teeth. The lines of his skin gave people an unnatural feeling of roughness, which looked like the dyed red skin of a fierce beast. His eyes were shining brilliantly, which accorded with all people's imagination of the word strong. He is from the Northern Gods domain, the disciple of the red steel genre. He should have a part of the bloodline of some giant. As far as I know, the redder the skins of the members of the red steel genre are, and the heavier their restraints are, the stronger their strength will be. Red Lotus saw through the giant man's identity and bloodline at a glance. It was not surprising to guess his identity, because the characters of the members of the red steel genre were too obvious. They were all over 2 meters tall and wore heavy restraints. Unless they were facing the critical moment of life and death, they would never take off the restraints. For them, fighting with restraints was as easy as breathing, and it was an extremely cruel method of austerity. As for the red skin, it was said that it was because of their special secret skill. They needed to change the structure of the skin to dissipate heat. The name of red steel came from their appearance and fighting style. The goal of their genre is to acquire the gift of God, rigid body. Rigid body. Yunshi recalled the two godlike talents teacher Kasina told him, rigid body and soft body. Yunshi himself had soft body, just like his teacher Kasina. He was very suitable for Kasina's battle god genre. This was the first time he saw a hero-ranked person who had rigid body. Isn't rigid body innate? Yunshi's soft body was from the blessing of Hydra, so he didn't understand how rare it was. In addition, he had also acquired the diamond body from Mu Mu seed, so he had little knowledge of god-like talents. How can that be possible? Even among real giants, rigid body is an extremely rare bloodline. This giant man has only a part of the bloodline of a giant, the probability of being born with rigid body is basically 0 for him. Red Lotus shook her head and looked at Yunshi with contempt. The ultimate goal of the red steel genre is to condense rigid body from day to day. The reason for wearing those huge restraints and metal boxers is not for defense, but for oppressing their own bodies, pushing the potential of their flesh and blood to the limit. All the masters of this genre are regular visitors of the Battle Gods Championship contest. As long as you took part in the Battle Gods Championship contest, you would meet their members sooner or later. But I didn't expect that his opponent would be. Red Lotus and White Lotus looked at the figure whose height wasn't even taller than the giant man's waist. Yes, no wonder I haven't seen her these days. She came to the qualifying competition. Yunshi looked at the girl standing opposite the giant man with a broken sword in her hand. She had calm eyes, slender body, black and white robe. Her appearance was slightly different today, but there was no doubt that she was the deputy leader of the Starwing Knights, Xiao Chao. At this moment, her body was wrapped with a faint red light, which was exactly the same as the red pillar of light rising into the sky just now. Undoubtedly, she was the person who just leveled up to the hero rank. Over the past few days, Xiao Chao had not been defeated even once in the competitions at the mortal rank. Finally, she met this red steel master who happened to pass here. Even though the hero-ranked giant man had suppressed his own rank to the mortal rank, however, just with the purest physical strength, the giant man called Red Stone had forced Xiao Chao to despair. Then, it was the scene Yunshi, Red Lotus and White Lotus saw just now. After being pushed into despair, Xiao Chao broke through the boundaries between the mortal rank and the hero rank, releasing her amazing potential. At this moment, although her sword had long been broken, her aura was strong enough to let Red Stone burst out his real strength. Hiss. Ga. Hiss. Ga. Feeling the tremendous pressure, Red Stone twisted his neck, and the muscles all over his body trembled. It's not fear, it's excitement. Just like the motto of the Red Steel genre, only those who cross the real horror of life and death are entitled to peep into the mystery of rigid body. Puff. Ha. He was using the basic secret skill of the Red Steel genre, lava breathing. Lava breathing, lava skin, and blood of red steel were the three core secrets in the practice of the Red Steel genre, and they were closely related and inherited in one continuous line. Only by practicing all three secrets to the limit, were they able to approach and open the door of rigid body. Red Stone had practiced lava skin and blood of red steel to the limit, but his practice of lava breathing was still in its infancy. This was the reason why he went to the Eastern Gods' domain and took part in the Battle Gods Championship contest. Caw. 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 The extreme heat of his skin almost burned the huge locks that Red Stone wore, especially the huge steel gloves. They were even emitting bursts of white smoke from them. At this moment, Red Stone looked like a volcano about to erupt. Compared with just before now, he looked like a completely different person. However, Xiao Chao's change was bigger and more obvious than him. Now, perhaps no one could recognize that the current Xiao Chao was the same ordinary girl when she just joined the Starwing Knights. Her freckled face had become flawless, her slender and healthy body had become higher, and her hands and feet had become more slender and powerful. Even her skin presented an exceptionally beautiful healthy color. On her forehead, a strange diamond-shaped mark naturally appeared, giving her a sense of mystery. After entering the hero rank, Xiao Chao's innocence of childhood finally disappeared. Now the girl standing on the stage of the Battle Gods Championship contest was a brand new Xiao Chao, the incarnation of heroic. The only thing still unchanged was probably only the size of her chest. Her breasts were still so small and exquisite. Even Yunshi could recall the time when he was on the tropical island, looking at Xiao Chao riding a killer whale to break the waves on the sea. In the past, as a civilian girl from a common family, Xiao Chao could already compete with Hua Yu's white golden rose bloodline. At this moment, Xiao Chao was one step ahead of Hua Yu, entering the hero rank earlier than Huayu. From a mortal to a hero, the gap could make many people feel despaired. This was a step that all intelligent creatures wanted to take to enter the higher realm. Only those who stepped out on this step were qualified to be the strongest in the endless gods' domains. God weapon, bloodline, secret skill, all the foundations came from this step. If you were not a hero, you were not even qualified to peep at the gate of that extraordinary world. Throughout the ages, only heroes could be remembered and praised, so people called it the hero rank. At this moment, another hero was born on the stage of the Battle Gods Championship contest. Through the special connection between himself and Xiao Qiao, Yunxi immediately understood what road Xiao Qiao had stepped on. Xiao Qiao's seed, mortal sword, perfect. The person who held this sword had practiced the mortal sword skill to the limit. Due to that, the person would be able to learn any high-level sword skills 2 times faster than ordinary people. Mind's eye, perfect, a kind of insight learning from practice and exercise. It could help the owner analyze the environment and catch the tiniest opportunity to reverse a bad situation. Combat intuition, awakened. This ability could help the owner analyze the battle trend and respond to it in advance. At any time, the owner of this ability could use 100% strength. Persevering heart, the grass-like girl has a persevering heart. It can help her open the door to a higher rank. The Great Road, totally opened in the long river of fate. Some people were blessed by the goddess of fortune. Even if they are still mortals, they were fated to create legends. Favored soul, the girl was blessed by the gods. More than one god was looking at her. All the incomplete states before had all become perfect. Now, the Great Road had totally opened and she obtained a new title, Favored Soul. The once ordinary girl finally opened her door to the extraordinary world and embarked on her road of cultivation. Being blessed by fate, Xiao Qiao had begun to create her legend, and Yunxi and the people around the stage of the Battle Gods Championship contest were witnessing this legend. Looking at Xiao Qiao at this moment, Yunxi had a feeling that he harvested the most from Xiao Qiao's seed amongst all the members of the Starwing Knights. If the feedback to Yunxi from Xiao Qiao's seed before was 1, then now, her seed could feedback him 100 times more experience than usual. This meant that Xiao Qiao's combat power may have increased more than 100 times after she had reached the hero rank. This was the gap between the mortal rank and the hero rank. The gap was so desperate, a hero-ranked being could almost ignore the army of mortals and destroy a kingdom alone. If Xiao Qiao obtained a god weapon, her combat power could be stronger and more terrible. Regardless of Huahua, Xiao Qiao's talent was probably the highest amongst all the girls Yunxi had ever met. Only by experiencing her power personally, one could really understand how terrible Xiao Qiao's talent was. At this moment, Redstone, the master of the red steel genre, was probably the only person who could understand Yunxi's feeling here. Puff! Ha! With hot gasps and violent heartbeats, Redstone opened his mouth and spat out a sulfur-colored breath. At the moment, he looked like a devil in hell, because his skin was as red as bleeding and there were flaming lines constantly appearing around his body. Even though he had used all the 3 secret skills of the red steel genre, lava breathing, lava skin, and blood of red steel, he couldn't stop the shock from his heart. The world was so big that nothing was too strange to happen. He had always listened to the ancestors of his clan describe the geniuses they had seen and boast that they had fought against these extraordinary geniuses. Unexpectedly, today he also met a genius who couldn't be described by common sense. P.S. The author didn't write C541, so there is no C541. Yunxi saw it through Xiao Qiao's seed. It was a brand new world. It was the world in Xiao Qiao's eyes, clear and distinct, but slightly different from the normal world. The most obvious thing was that through Xiao Qiao's eyes, he clearly saw the circulation route of blood in the body of the master of the red steel genre, and the dozens of flaws on his seemingly indestructible skin. These flaws were right under those restraints, as well as in the huge steel gloves on both hands. It seemed that he knew his weaknesses well, so he firmly protected these weaknesses with restraints and steel gloves. However, weaknesses are weaknesses. The real rigid body doesn't have these weaknesses. So many weaknesses and flaws meant that the seemingly invincible master's physique was still far inferior to the real rigid body. Seeing through her opponent's weaknesses was one of the abilities Xiao Qiao acquired after she advanced into the realm of the hero rank, which was as natural as breathing for her now. It wasn't difficult to imagine that people with this talent and ability would obtain great advantage in battles. Now what Xiao Qiao was still short of was only one god weapon that was suitable for her. Good. Very good, I'm glad to meet such an opponent. Redstone raised his fists and hit them together violently. Two huge steel gloves bumped and made a deafening metal roar. This was the signal that Redstone was really into a full-blown combat state at this moment. When using the three secret skills, lava breathing, lava skin, and blood of red steel, together, they would cause a great burden on the body. Even though Redstone had a part of the bloodline of the giants, he wasn't an exception. Apart from the person who had rigid body, there was a time limit for any person who was using the three secret skills together. The time that Redstone could use the three secret skills was 5 minutes. 5 minutes seemed to be short, but most disciples of the red steel genre couldn't reach this time in their lifetime. Most disciples of the red steel genre could only use the three secret skills together for 3 minutes, but even so, there weren't many strong hero-ranked beings who could withstand their fierce attacks for 3 minutes. When facing the full attack of the disciples of the red steel genre, most people would try their best to run away with the 3 minutes and launch a counterattack after that. Whizzing. Huge white smoke soared up from Redstone's hair. In the next moment, he jumped up at a speed that was absolutely inconsistent with his huge body. His hands were clasped together, and the whole person was like a giant hammer falling from the sky, smashing fiercely at Xiao Qiao. What should I do if I'm facing his attack? Yunxi tried to imagine himself confronted with such a fierce blow, and found that he had no means to confront the attack directly. Driving the crane wing's twin swords to the fastest speed to dodge this attack, this was the only way Yunxi could think of to avoid this blow. His swordsman career hadn't yet entered the hero rank, so he didn't have the power to fight against such a frantic strength now. Xiao Qiao's choice was to bend her body, just like grass blown down by a strong wind. She steadfastly drew out her sword. The long sword, which had already been scarred, broke off from the center with a crisp noise under Redstone's attack. Too bad. Yunxi knew that Xiao Qiao was a pure swordsman. If she lost her sword, her fighting power would be greatly reduced. Moreover, Xiao Qiao's sword was special to her. She didn't throw it away although it had been broken in the last battle with Huayu. Now, it was totally broken. This result wasn't too surprising. After all, it was just a common iron sword that had no quality to withstand the power of the hero rank. Xiao Qiao watched her sword breaking under the blow with a sad look, but she still held it tightly in her hand. Although the sword in her hand was broken, the sword in her heart was not broken yet. Instantly, the remaining half-broken sword in her hand glowed with brand and new brilliance, chopping on Redstone's steel gloves. Hiss! Sparks splashed on the gloves made of super metal, which was obviously not what a common iron sword could cause. Sword aura. Red Lotus looked at the sword in Xiao Qiao's hands in surprise. Her will strengthened the essence of the sword and the strength of the blade. White Lotus saw more clearly than Red Lotus and made a more accurate judgment. Yunxi went a step further and felt the indomitable breath emanating from the blade of the sword. Even though this sword was just a common iron sword that only a novice would use. However, after it accompanied Xiao Qiao growing up, leaving the village, attending the entrance examinations of the Sword Palace, until now, it and she finally stepped on the battlefield belonging to the hero rank. It had been broken once in Xiao Chao's battle with Hua Yu. After that, Xiao Chao asked the blacksmith to reforge it, and used this ordinary iron sword to fight against one opponent after another. This time, it finally suffered a fatal blow. Even if Xiao Chao asked the blacksmith to reforge it again, it would be meaningless. The sword had reached the end of its own limit. Yunxi could even feel that the broken sword was emitting a sense of sadness. Part of the most precious memories in Xiao Chao's heart was disappearing. It could no longer move forward with Xiao Chao anymore. This iron sword was just a common sword forged by a common blacksmith. It was not qualified to possess a sword soul. Even its material was so poor that it had only one advantage: durable. Only newbie civilian swordsmen would use such a weapon. The children of noble families would never use such poor weapons. However, such a poor weapon had accompanied Xiao Chao through night after night, season after season, and finally came to the world-renowned Battle Gods Championship contest. The weapons of the opponents Xiao Chao had defeated were countless times more valuable than it. As a common iron sword for newbies, the mission of this sword had long been accomplished and far surpassed. The world Xiao Chao was going to enter was destined to be out of touch with this sword. Today was the last day Xiao Chao used it. Yunxi noticed this, and Xiao Chao noticed it too. Boom! With a blow from his fist, Redstone beat Xiao Chao back and then shook his head. Change your sword. It limits your strength. Xiao Chao gazed at the iron sword in disintegration even though it had been strengthened by her hero-ranked power. It can't fight anymore. Not only the appearance of the sword, but also the basic particles that make up the sword was dissolving and disappearing under Redstone's violent attack before. Compared to Redstone's spirit weapons, his steel gloves, it was a miracle that this common iron sword could hold up until now. Even though Xiao Chao had used the sword to cut through the thick steel gloves many times, but these scratches have already begun to self-repair at a fast speed. This was the special ability of the pair of spirit weapons. I have a sword here, a good sword. Wait, I have a big sword here. Master, use my sword. Under the stage of the Battle Gods Championship contest, many businessmen shouted, and some of them even directly took out their swords. Of course, none of the swords were god weapons. But apart from that, there were all top-level spirit weapons. Xiao Chao looked silently at the broken sword in her hand. No, it was overpraised to call it broken sword now. It was actually just a combination of fragments. Without Xiao Chao's hero-ranked power, the sword would have turned into ashes and disappeared. The sword belonging to Xiao Chao was actually dead. Sorry, Xiao Chao looked at it sadly, but soon her eyes became more resolute. Please. I need you to keep fighting with me. There are still a lot of opponents. Yunxi felt that from Xiao Chao's body, some unspeakable firm will was spreading. Like countless trampled little grasses, even if everyone had given up, Xiao Chao, grass, would never give up. Why do I need to change my sword? Is it because the sword is not hard enough? Then, the problem would be very simple. Let her make it hard enough, oh. Just like she grew up from a first-ranked female swordsman to a hero-ranked female swordsman. This time, it was her turn to help the sword that had been growing with her. Can it be? She wants to. Yunxi guessed what Xiao Chao would do. It would be an unimaginable choice to any ordinary people. She had numerous choices. After stepping into the hero rank, countless forces would be willing to provide her the best weapons and the best equipment. However, Xiao Chao didn't want any of them. The only sword she chose was this sword. The other swords, no matter how gorgeous, sharp or extraordinary they are not her swords. I have only one sword. It was a decision and a declaration. The girl whose life was like a grass chose an ordinary iron sword. This was her sword. From now on, your name is Gladiolus. Gladiolus was a common plant with sharp blades. It was the same as the desert cactus, even in an extremely harsh environment, it could strive to grow up. For Xiao Qiao, there was no weapon more suitable for herself than such a sword. Don't cry. I'll fix you. The once broken, melted, and even disintegrated iron fragments began to gather toward Xiao Qiao's position. This is, Redstone stared at the magical scene, and all his muscles trembled. She is casting her own god weapon, she is giving her weapon life, using her fantasy, this should be the realm of gods. White Lotus murmured to herself, looking at the countless particles flying into Xiao Qiao's palms. Most god weapons created by humans needed to obtain history and connotation before they could really appear in the world. Only very few people could make a god weapon without the wash of time, and all of them were beloved by the rules of the world. Undoubtedly, Xiao Qiao was one of them who were beloved by the world. With such a favor of the world, she could easily obtain numerous spirit weapons whose weapon souls wanted to become a god weapon. However, Xiao Qiao chose none of them but the common iron sword, and she would keep using this common iron sword henceforth. Xiao Qiao and Gladiolus were a pair of combinations that could grow up and become strong together. Gladiolus. Hello. After the recasting, the sword Gladiolus looked exactly the same as before, but its internal essence had changed dramatically. It was no longer a common iron sword, but a god weapon that had had its real name. In front of its master, the sword Gladiolus gave out a pleasant and crisp sound in return for its master's voice. A layer of brilliant light flowed on the sword body of Gladiolus, reflecting Xiao Qiao's calm and determined eyes. Let's fight. Feeling the strong aura from Xiao Qiao's sword, Redstone's eyes turned red. Don't get him wrong, he didn't feel angry, but it was a show of extreme excitement. The strongest opponent was precisely the goal pursued by all disciples of the red steel genre. Because the sword didn't contain any special history and connotation, apart from hardness, Gladiolus didn't have any special ability. But for Xiao Qiao, that was enough. With her sword, she could fight. She fought and she would win. Magnetic force. Redstone displayed the secret skill of his steel gloves. Although the steel gloves were a pair of god weapons, they had a special, mysterious power that even the real god weapons didn't possess: magnetic force. His steel gloves could store strong magnetic field force. Usually, as a pair of restraints, the magnetic force could make the steel gloves to become 10 times heavier for Redstone to practice his body, and when fighting, he could release the magnetic force to absorb his opponent's weapons. Xiao Qiao's sword, Gladiolus, and her body were directly absorbed by this magnetic force together. Paw! From 3 meters away, Redstone raised his arms high and threw Xiao Qiao and her sword into the sky by controlling the magnetic force. At the same time, with a sudden step on his feet, he stepped out a big pit on the hard stage made of obsidian, and his body rushed into the sky. Burst! The tremendous magnetic force burst out in one breath, together with Redstone's amazing weight and strong strength, bearing down on Xiao Qiao's body like a mountain. Push people down with force. This was the core of the practice of the red steel genre. All the secret skills and equipment of the red steel genre were prepared for this purpose. Gravity and magnetism were the best ways for the masters of the red steel genre to suppress their opponent's speed and turn the battlefield into their own home court. For the first time meeting such an attack, Xiao Qiao had no experience for dealing with this and was at a disadvantage. Boom! Her body smashed on the obsidian ground. The gravitational field released by Redstone transmitted into the ground, then exploded suddenly. Like the process of an earthquake, the ground vibrated continuously. Even though the ground was made of obsidian, it couldn't withstand the force of the continuous oscillation, and eventually broke off like a broken string. The earth began to shake and tremble, and numerous dense cracks appeared on the black ground. Suddenly there was a huge muffled sound echoed between the sky and the earth. All the watchers under the stage had the delusion that the sky was falling and would hit the earth in an instant. The whole venue of the Battle Gods Championship contest seemed to be hit hard by an invisible giant hammer. Countless people were bounced up and then fell ashen. As for the obsidian stage, facing this attack, it was completely blown up. Push the opponent down with force. This was what the goal of the red steel genre, this was the strongest they pursued. The ultimate goal was to practice the body to the limit, reproducing the rigid body again. It was one of the red steel genre's secret skill called smashing the ground. The principle was to absorb the opponent by magnetic force, suppress the opponent by gravity field, then throw the opponent to the sky, and finally catch the opponent in the air to launch a lethal blow towards the earth. The most terrible thing about this tactic was that even if you knew exactly what was going to happen, you just couldn't avoid it. It was extremely difficult to get rid of this set of combo attacks for anyone during the period when the master of the red steel genre was still using the 3 secret skills. On the stage of the Battle Gods Championship contest, even those who were very fast and flexible would end up in tragedy once they were captured by the magnetic field. Those who thought that those red giants were just monsters who used brute force were all punched to death by them. In the dust, Redstone's right fist pounded heavily on a seemingly ordinary iron sword. Did she block my attack? Redstone looked at Xiao Chao in his gravity field in surprise. As a high-level fighting skill of the red steel genre, it was a secret skill combining by 3 secret skills: magnetic attraction, gravity release, and ground crushing. Most hero-ranked people wouldn't adapt to this distorted gravity when they first encountered the restraint of 10 times gravity. 10 times of gravity wouldn't just make the muscles suffer 10 times pressure, including the most vulnerable human retinal nerve, internal organs, body fluid would suffer tremendous damage. For ordinary people, even a doubling of gravity could cause instantaneous death. The reason why Redstone can withstand 10 times the pressure of gravity was that his 3 secret skills, lava breathing, lava skin, and blood of red steel, were all powerful secret skills related to body strengthening. Even so, Redstone began to adapt from the most basic double gravity. From the mortal rank to the hero rank, after experiencing many life-or-death crises, his body finally adapted to the 10 times gravity, and successfully mastered the secret skill, smashing the ground. Don't underestimate this secret skill. Although it only smashed a big hole on the ground, that was because the ground of the Battle Gods Championship contest was made of obsidian. Without a god weapon, only very few hero-ranked people could break the ground of the Battle Gods Championship contest. If Redstone used this secret skill outside the stage of the Battle Gods Championship contest, it could even cause a small earthquake. Without the help of any god weapon, many 5th and 6th ranked people couldn't cause this damage. After all, not everyone could strengthen their bodies at all times like the disciples of the red steel genre. They didn't even remove the gravity field when they were sleeping. At the 4th rank, Redstone had defeated countless hero-ranked people using this secret skill, smashing the ground. However, this wasn't the end of his attack. Why wasn't this secret skill called magnetic throwing, but smashing the ground? Because the most terrible attack would actually begin after the opponent was hit on the ground. Crush the earth. Redstone roared, and his right fist turned into a huge palm, and his whole body seemed to have risen a little bit, reaching 3 meters tall. On his red skin, there were lava vapors rising and numerous blood vessels appeared on his body, making him look like a demon coming out of the volcano. 10 times gravity field. Compression. Turn around the magnetic field. The most terrible attack of smashing the ground had begun. Most of Redstone's opponents would have been defeated when they were thrown to the ground. Only the strongest opponent whose body could quickly adapt to the 10 times gravity field would make Redstone have to launch this attack. Boom! If the fall just now was as dull as a heavy hammer, then the smashing the ground now was like the bombardment of numerous heavy hammers on the ground. Compared with the astonishing shot just now, the attack this moment wasn't so powerful but was several times more terrible. In order to strengthen the body to the limit, Redstone had already run all the 3 secret skills to the limit, and even then was fresh blood flowing out of his ears. The running time of the 3 secret skills, which could last for 5 minutes originally, was also rapidly shortened by the use of this skill. Boom! 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 The whole of the space of the Battle Gods Championship contest was trembling, and a shrill voice was emitted. The stage of the Battle Gods Championship contest had never suffered such violent destruction since its construction was completed. Ding! A crisp sound of sword echoed in the air. It was a flying swallow, spreading its wings freely. Getting rid of the constraint of the magnetic field and gravity, the swallow flew up to the sky. Flying swallow sword. Red Lotus was dumbfounded, because she had seen this skill before. Isn't it one of the secret skills of the monster, Hua Hua? Not the same swallow. White Lotus shook her head. Although it looked very similar to Hua Hua's flying swallow sword, essentially, they were something quite different. Hua Hua's flying swallow sword was as fast as lightning, she could tear open the sky even in storms. That was because Hua Hua herself was too strong. The flying swallow she incarnated was so strong that she could disperse lightning and storm, her swallow could tear up all her opponents. Xiao Chao's flying swallow was far from strong enough, so she paid more attention to defusing her opponent's strength in battles. She wasn't Hua Hua, whose body was strong enough to withstand 10 times gravity. The reason why Redstone hadn't defeated Xiao Chao was because Xiao Chao's sword was cutting and destroying the seemingly perfect gravity field and counteracting most of its strength. It was not because Hua Hua's flying swallow wasn't perfect, but because Hua Hua's strength was already strong enough to defeat all enemies without using any special skills. Her flying swallow had long gone beyond the concept of perfection and become something else. On the contrary, Xiao Chao had not inherited any high-level sword skills. By analyzing the flying swallow planted into her body through Yunqi seed, she reached a fantastic realm through her own efforts. Faced with the pressure of the gravity field, she needed to exert every part of her strength to the limit, so that she could find a slim chance of survival in the face of Redstone's fierce attack. To this end, Xiao Chao's flying swallow was born. Only the sword Gladiolus, Xiao Chao's special god weapon, could cooperate with her so perfectly. Every second and every minute, her understanding and adaptability to the 10 times gravity field kept increasing, and her proficiency in cutting the gravity field had also become better and better. When Redstone caught Xiao Chao and smashed her to the ground, the pressure of the gravity field to Xiao Chao had only left about half of it. Even so, she suffered a lot of injuries. As Redstone's strongest secret skill, smashing the ground, was not something harmless to Xiao Chao. She had just entered the hero rank, 5 times gravity field was still too strong to her. After all, Xiao Chao was still a human being, not a semi-giant mixed with the blood of giant like Redstone. However, it was at such a moment of life and death that Xiao Chao's understanding of gravity field increased at an amazing speed. 60%, 70%, 80%, oh. By the time Redstone launched the last, smashing the ground, and prepared to unleash the final blow on Xiao Chao, she had completed the full analysis of the gravity field. 100%. 10 times gravity field become totally null and void to her now. Swallow, start flying. This moment, Xiao Chao was like a stubborn grass growing under the oppression of boulders, drilling out from the dark underground world. Once she flies, she will fly into the sky. 10 times gravity can no longer tie Xiao Chao at this moment. What? Watching Xiao Chao slip out from his huge palm, Redstone was flabbergasted. His gravity field was still working at full speed. Why could she slip away? His eyes didn't even catch the flash of the flying swallow's shadow. The victor has been decided. Red Lotus looked at the figure soaring in the sky with admiration. The gravity field has been cut up and the big man hasn't found out yet. Golden Crow Princess looked at the silly big guy with disdain. Flying Swallow, 1 flash. 2 flashes. 3 flashes. Flying in the sky, Xiao Chao was free from the shackles of the earth. She cut the gravity field into pieces with her sword Gladiolus. Without the protection of the gravity field, Redstone's body was totally defenseless now. Oh. Eventually, Redstone realized what had happened and raised his head abruptly. He lifted his fists again. The huge metal cuffs made a deafening roar and the breath of sulfur appeared in his mouth and nose again. Arm. Neck. The middle of the chest. Abdomen. Waist. Knees. Lower leg. Back. Vertebra. Top. A perfect 10-fold flying swallow sword. Xiao Chao successfully performed the skill that even Yunxi couldn't perform now. Apart from Redstone's neck, which was protected by the huge restraint, 9 deep wounds appeared on his body. The sword Gladiolus completely tore up his seemingly indestructible defense and cut open his lava skin straightly. Redstone fell to the ground and his expanding body restored to its original size. The pair of steel gloves also hit the ground heavily, making a dull noise. Ho! Ho, really? Beautiful, good opponent. This kind of injury could let any ordinary people die instantly, but Redstone laughed in the pool of his own blood as if it was just a minor injury. You're a good opponent too. Xiao Chao gently wiped the blood from the corners of her mouth and smiled. Win or lose, everything was determined within an instant. A large amount of thick blood flowed out from the wounds on Redstone's body. In terms of volume, the volume of the blood had long surpassed the volume that a normal human's body could have. If it was any other hero-ranked being, he should have died. The hero rank could indeed grant its owner extraordinary powers, but only very few hero-ranked beings could have an immortal body at this stage. Cough. Cough. Redstone twisted his neck and took a deep breath. Suddenly, the muscles all over his body twisted and contracted. Then he staggered to his feet and slowly made a strange position in front of all the astonished people. He stood with his feet and raised his hands, as if he was lifting an invisible iron ball. But from his face, he looked confident. Then he fell into complete silence. Oh, this is the legendary vigorous posture. Red Lotus watched Redstone, who had stopped moving after making this posture. Well, that's the vigorous posture. This was also the first time for White Lotus to see this famous posture of the masters of the Red Steel genre. Whenever the masters of the Red Steel genre suffered serious injuries or was even dying, their bodies would naturally activate this posture. It was said that this posture could let them absorb the ubiquitous energy between heaven and earth to recover their wounds. As long as they could step on the earth and raise their hands to the sky, no matter how seriously the damage they had suffered, they wouldn't die immediately. Even if their hearts were penetrated through, as long as their heads hadn't been destroyed, then the vigorous posture could maintain their lives. Of course, if the injury was too serious or it was a curse, it could even take them many years to recover. According to history books, the longest record was 300 years. A master of the Red Steel genre was hit by a curse of a god weapon. He jumped into the sea to escape in a hurry and then launched a vigorous posture on the seabed in order to resist the erosion of the curse. As a result, 300 years had passed and the body of this master had turned into a nest of coral reefs and fish, and the assassin who cursed him had died many years ago before he finally woke up from keeping this posture. Of course, there was no curse on the blade of Xiao Chao's sword. The wounds on Redstone's skin looked lethal, and the amount of blood he had bled could scare anyone. But judging from the healing speed of the wounds on his body, he could recover and wake up a few days later. Looking at Redstone, who looked like a perfect statue at this moment, Xiao Chao put away her sword Gladiolus and merged it into her body. This was the advantage of having an exclusive god weapon. As the original creator of Gladiolus, the adaptability between Xiao Chao and Gladiolus was 100% from the beginning. She didn't need to cultivate the tacit understanding between her and her sword like other people who inherited ancient god weapons. Although as a god weapon, Gladiolus didn't have any special ability, Xiao Chao could exert all the power that Gladiolus had, which was already a realm that many people couldn't reach. Here you are. Xiao Chao jumped directly from the stage and walked towards Yunxi. Yunxi looked at Xiao Chao in surprise. After entering the hero rank, the freckles on her face disappeared completely, which made her look more pretty. He still remembered when he first saw Xiao Chao, she was just a common, thin girl who looked somewhat malnourished. Now, Xiao Chao's height had increased a little, and her hands and feet not only became more powerful, but also became more beautiful. The flexibility of her body had also increased significantly. Looking back on the girls of the Starwing Knights, this change seemed to happen not only to Xiao Chao, but to all the girls of the Starwing Knights. Congratulations, that swallow just now was beautiful. Yunxi's admiration was sincere. That inconspicuous little grass finally transformed into a beautiful flower today. The great road that belonged to Xiao Chao finally opened. Although Yunxi had known it would happen soon or later after he first saw Xiao Chao's seed. Even without his seed, it was only a matter of time for Xiao Chao. The mortal sword and the great road, who was the god who had a partiality for Xiao Chao? I will still work hard. Xiao Chao looked at the twin witches and Golden Crown Princess dispassionately. Her eyes were as quiet as a pool of clear water. Yes, it's a good thing to be stronger. The battle just now was wonderful. As a Casina the battle god's admirer, Red Lotus appreciated Xiao Chao's performance on the stage just now. If it wasn't because of their special identities, Red Lotus would have stepped onto the stage, fighting with endless opponents from different gods' domains like what Xiao Chao did before. If it wasn't because of the tradition of the witches, she and White Lotus would have already left the White Lotus sword domain, creating their own legends in the endless gods' domains. Thanks. I still have a lot of shortcomings. Xiao Chao shook her head and didn't seem to be proud of her achievement. After all, she knew how strong Hua Hua was. With Hua Hua as a reference object, Xiao Chao didn't think that she could feel satisfied at all. Not just Xiao Chao, but all the girls of the Starwing Knights thought so after seeing Hua Hua's terrible power. How does it feel to enter the hero rank? Yunxi was curious about what kind of scenery she saw when she stepped into the realm of the hero rank. It was a little hot and numb, as if I was being electrified. That feeling. It was like when you touched my body, Xiao Chao said frankly. Oh. The next moment, Yunxi felt that the temperature around his body had suddenly risen by tens of degrees. Did you touch her? Golden Crow Princess scowled darkly at Yunxi. In fact, sweat streamed down Yunxi's face. It wasn't something that a child like her should know. Did Mei touch you or not? Golden Crow Princess turned around and asked Xiao Chao. Yes, she touched me, many times, very comfortable, Xiao Chao answered honestly. Chapter 547, The Agreement with Golden Crow Princess, 1, Many times. Golden Crow Princess' eyes became hotter and hotter, and the temperature of the air rose sharply. If White Lotus hadn't enclosed this area by casting a magic spell, the people around them would have ignited. A god's anger was a real natural disaster for mortals. In order to calm Golden Crow Princess' anger, Yunshi had to stand up and hold her little body in his arms. It was really a thrilling thing to date a god. Xiao Chao, you're killing me. Yunshi looked innocently at Xiao Chao, who still didn't know what was happening. All of the girls of the Starwing Knights. Mei has touched them all. Xiao Chao tilted her head. Apparently, she didn't grasp Yunshi's hint at all. Starwing Knights. Golden Crow Princess firmly remembered this name and tried to struggle out of Yunshi's arms. However, Yunshi had rich experience in capturing young girls. After gently grasping Golden Crow Princess' arms, he tickled her. Golden Crow Princess couldn't help but emit a series of silverbell-like laughter. The kid-tempered Golden Crow Princess' anger came fast and went quickly. Her attention was suddenly diverted because of this. Looking at Yunshi's skillful embrace, Red Lotus was dumbfounded. Golden Crow Princess is a god. How dare this maid tickle a god? And why does she look so skilled? Xiao Chao looked at Golden Crow Princess with envy. Oh, it was a good thing that all girls of the Starwing Knights hoped to happen to themselves. I won't forget, once I'm born. I will solve this problem right away. Golden Crow Princess puffed, biting on Yunshi's finger with a lovely flush of red on her little white face. You are mine. Mei. Yunshi helplessly watched the capricious Golden Crow Princess and was wondering whether he had just done another wrong thing. Master, don't be afraid. Anyway, you have trampled on so many boats, that a nice boat won't happen even if you step on one more boat. Cheer up. Mayor encouraged Yunshi. If Master has a good relationship with Golden Crow Princess now, he will obtain a great advantage in the future. It wouldn't be wrong to treat her well now. If it wasn't because Golden Crow Princess looked too young now, she had already suggested Yunshi to. For Mayor, the human morals didn't exist at all in her eyes. Mayor's goal was never to help Yunshi become a gentleman, but to help him grow stronger and stronger, and eventually get rid of the fate of being separated into pieces by his 4 terrible ex-girlfriends. To this end, she would trample on all the moral principles of the human world and ignore all the ethical relations. Justice. What is that? Is it delicious? The child of stars doesn't need such a thing. Don't think that Maya was just a common small dog. Although her strength was still insignificant, it was only because she was still in her infancy. The growth of the star spirit was closely related to her master. After Yunshi advances to the hero rank, Mayer's abilities would increase dramatically. The Star Spirit team was the prototype of the legion she prepared for herself. The little Mayor had a great ambition. In order to let the great star child grow up, she would sacrifice everything. Well, of course, to sacrifice everything others had. At sunset, on the beach nearby the White Lotus Sword Palace, where Yunshi and Huayu strolled together not too long ago. In Yunshi's arms, Golden Crow Princess' figure became a little illusory, which was a sign that her time in the world would end soon. The gods' one-day date was coming to an end. According to the 3 stages of the sacrificial ceremony, the time of sending the god away was coming. Red Lotus and White Lotus tacitly kept a distance from the beach, handing Golden Crow Princess to Yunshi. Although they were actually the hosts of the sacrificial ceremony, they knew the reason why Golden Crow Princess responded to their voices and came to the altar. Her preference for somebody was just too obvious. The protagonist of the sacrificial ceremony was not the twin witches but the black-haired maid. Mei. Why are you pretending to be a maid? As a god, Golden Crow Princess wouldn't be fooled by a person's appearance. She knew his gender from first to last. Well, it was a mistake. Yunshi combed her delicate hair and sighed helplessly. He didn't know why, but he had a wonderful sense of familiarity with Golden Crow Princess. He felt like no matter what would happen, he could be sure that Golden Crow Princess would stand on his side. This feeling was the same as when he first met Mumu. If he could plant his seed in her body, then the seed's affinity would be as high as the seed in Mumu's body. Yunshi had this intuition. Unfortunately, he couldn't plant his seed in any legend-ranked being's body, so this could only be his reasoning. Chapter 548, The Agreement with Golden Crow Princess, 2, May, do you want power? Golden Crow Princess tried to use her clumsy methods to capture Yunshi's heart. A golden red flame appeared in her palm. It was a kind of pure power of the sun, a part of her life. As long as Yunshi accepted this wisp of fire, she would share her life with him, and Yunshi's body would evolve uncontrollably towards the form of a sunwalker, and eventually become the same sun as her. In this process, Yunshi would gradually lose his human posture, but in return, he would obtain eternal life and glory. It wasn't a tough choice for anyone, because no one would refuse the glory of the sun. The power of the gods was within the reach of Yunshi at this moment. As long as he nodded, as long as he reached out his hand, Golden Crow Princess would turn him into a sunwalker and even share her position as a god with him. As for the impact of two suns appearing in the sky, Golden Crow Princess didn't mind it at all. She wasn't a kind fantastic creature who cared about what others thought. The power of the sun, thanks, but I'm not qualified to use it now, Yunshi shook his head. He knew that kind of power was extremely strong, but now he couldn't use it, nor should he use it. Holding a sealed SN drive was his limit for now. If he couldn't control the power of the sun, the same end in the battlefield of gods would happen to the whole of the White Lotus Sword domain. Infinite light and heat would melt the ground, cover the world and lead to the end of all things. To do all this, only the power of a furnace, SN drive, was needed, that was to say, if he released the power in the sealed furnace in his hand, he could destroy the world. It doesn't matter. Just accept this and you can go back to the Kunlun God's domain with me. My mother will be happy to see you, too. Golden Crow Princess said with confidence. The Kunlun God's domain, Yunshi looked at her with a mixed feeling. The Kunlun God's domain, the strongest God's domain in the Eastern God's domains. However, this was also an extremely closed God's domain, no one could even reach this God's domain through the star bridges. All the star bridges leading to the Kunlun God's domain had been cut off. Legend had it that you could only enter Kunlun God's domain by walking through a god weapon called Kunlun Mirror, which was controlled by the West Queen. For people living in the Eastern God's domains, the Kunlun God's domain was more like an ideal land in a fantasy than a real existing God's domain. According to legend, the free energies in the air of the Kunlun God's domain were thousands of times thicker than that in other normal worlds. This was the homeland of countless fantastic creatures. Phoenix, Yinglong, Kirin, golden-winged ROC bird, Bifang, Bays. Every fantastic creature was a real legend-ranked being. Because of this, many people doubted the existence of the Kunlun God's domain. After all, the vast majority of people, including more than 90% of hero-ranked beings, had never touched any trace of the existence of the Kunlun God's domain. For Kunlun, Yunshi's impression had always remained in the stories his parents told him before he went to bed. If the Kunlun God's domain was just a story existing in Yunshi's mind, then now, the Golden Crow Princess stretched out her hand to him, proving that it wasn't just a story existing in people's mouths, but a real world, the homeland of Golden Crow Princess. As long as he held her hand, he could gain her life power and go to the Kunlun God's domain together with her. Everything looked so natural. Yunshi would never doubt Golden Crow Princess' sincerity. She would not deceive him. His intuition told him so. However, his intuition also told him that he must not go to the Kunlun God's domain now, otherwise, some unexpected incidents would occur. If I let my mom see you, she would be very happy. Golden Crow Princess was still immersed in her great plan. Wasn't it because she wanted to see May, so if she went to this unknown sword domain? Now that I see him, I can't let him go. I must get what I like. He was the pride of the princess of the Kunlun god's domain. Mother. West Queen, Yunshi imagined the scene if West Queen saw him and Golden Crow Princess together. Baby, you're back. Mom, I'm back with my lover. What? Who is this bastard? Execute him. Skin him and hang him on the top of the Kunlun mountain for 7 days and 7 nights. Yunshi shivered. Although it was just a less reliable inference, he believed that nothing good would happen if West Queen saw her little daughter bringing back an unknown man. Sorry. I can't go there now. After a chill, Yunshi decided to give up this option, even though it could let him boost his strength at the fastest speed. He couldn't go to the Kunlun god's domain now. It was no different from suicide. Chapter 549, The Agreement with Golden Crow Princess, 3, Why? Golden Crow Princess looked extremely disappointed. The power of the sun. It's too early for me. Yunshi made an excuse, and it was indeed the truth. For him, who was just a common baker not long ago, it was too hard to believe that he would suddenly be in charge of the power of the sun. Although Golden Crow Princess promised that he could obtain the power of the sun just by taking her fire, Yunshi instinctively felt that things would not be so simple. He hadn't even crossed the threshold between the mortal rank and the hero rank. How could he reach the sky in a single bound, possessing the power of the god? Even with the help of the will of the stars, after experiencing several life-or-death trials, he just touched the door of the hero rank. In what way could a human being directly turn into a fantastic creature? Would that be really as easy as what Golden Crow Princess said? It's very simple. As long as you accept the fire of the sun and sleep with me in the egg for thousands of years, we can be born together in the Kunlun god's domain, and then you will become a new sun crow. With a relaxed expression on her face, Golden Crow Princess said something that made Yunshi feel both funny and annoyed. Ah, that's the time concept of a fantastic creature. A sleep could take them thousands of years. Indeed, Yunshi didn't doubt Golden Crow Princess' words. However, to him, this way of transforming his life form was still too difficult to accept. Moreover, if he slept thousands of years in the same egg with Golden Crow Princess, what could he do if his 4 terrible ex-girlfriends found him during this period? There would be no way for him to run away by that time. Therefore, even if it could really let him reach the legend rank easily, Yunshi wouldn't accept it. Moreover, as a human, thousands of years were too long for Yunshi. So, sorry, I can't accept your offer. I can only reach the legend rank by myself. Well, it wasn't because he was scared of his 4 terrible ex-girlfriends. It really was not. Yunshi showed a very sad look on his face and refused Golden Crow Princess once again. Why? If you want to become stronger, it's better to transform into a sun crow. Golden Crow Princess didn't understand what fate Yunshi was carrying, so she could not understand Yunshi's inexplicable choice at all. I'll try my best to entreat my mother to share half of my blood with you. You just need to close your eyes and fall asleep. As long as you open your eyes, you will become as beautiful as me. Then, we will fly and dance above the 33 heavens together. We will be the most shining couple. Ah, I can imagine this future. Yunshi raised his head as if he had seen the fantastic scene. If it wasn't because of his 4 terrible ex-girlfriends, it may become true. He had to refuse her with a lie. Although it was a shame to lie to such a child. However, he still had to lie. Even a decent gentleman sometimes needed to consider his speech according to the situation. Sorry, you are still young, maybe you can't understand it. A real strong man can't take the road of getting power without any exertions. The power of the sun is not my first choice. Actually, he really had a feeling that the power of the sun was perfect for him. I have my own future. If there weren't those 4 ex-girlfriends, maybe I would really go with you. May, don't you like the sun? Golden Crow Princess looked like she was going to cry out. From birth till now, she had never known what rejection was. Even if she was going to crash the sky, her omnipotent mother would just laugh, and then use the Kunlun mirror to repair the sky. No, I like the sun, I like the little sun like you. However, I'm just a human. I haven't practiced the power belonging to the sun, because human beings cannot directly use the power of the sun is too powerful for us. Yunshi touched Golden Crow Princess' smooth cheek and dripped blood in his heart. What a pure, kind, innocent child. She is even willing to share half of her life with me. Yes, May really likes me. Golden Crow Princess didn't listen to a word Yunshi said after this sentence. I like the sun, I like the little sun like you. Anyone in the Kunlun god's domain didn't dare to call her little sun, except for West Queen. Children always dislike people to call them child. However, it wouldn't be a problem if it was Yunshi. Any praise from Yunshi could make Golden Crow Princess feel happy from the bottom of her heart. Why? Just listening to his voice is making me so happy. If I could grow up in the egg with him, it would be 10 times, 100 times the happiness. It doesn't matter, even though he had refused me 3 times. From the beginning, Golden Crow Princess hadn't considered the option of going back alone. Are you kidding me? It's not easy to meet the person I like. It must be so-called fate. No matter how many fantastic creatures there are in the Kunlun god's domain, there can be no one more suitable for me than May. From the moment Max summoned her on the starry sky chessboard, she had realized that this person was special to her. Nobody but him would do. I will accept no one except him. Even if she had to force him, she would take him back to the Kunlun god's domain. May. It may hurt, but it doesn't matter. It will be just a moment. Golden Crow Princess' eyes became dangerous, and behind her back, the pair of little golden red wings slowly emitted dangerous golden red particles. A small but delicate furnace, which was personally made by Yunshi, emerged on her shoulder, giving Yunshi a sense of great misfortune. What are you going to do to me with that furnace, Sendrive? Its power could even kill a god. No, it's too dangerous. It's not a child's toy. May. Even though you said so, I still want to go back into the egg together with you. I'm sure you'll like being the sun. Golden Crow Princess stood on her toes and held Yunshi's body with great strength. Even though this was only an incarnation, a god's strength wasn't something that Yunshi could break away from at this time. Wow, the princess is out of control. It's easy to invite the god, but difficult to send the god away. Looking at them from a distance, White Lotus sighed. Sometimes, there will be such a bad god, and this time, it should have been the time for the witch to come forward. Give up, it's beyond our capability. Red Lotus looked happily at May, who had been captured by Golden Crow Princess. It couldn't be better to let the god take this black-haired maid away. In just one day, her White Lotus had become more and more strange. She really didn't understand why White Lotus and even Golden Crow Princess were infatuated with the maid. Now, Golden Crow Princess liked you so much that she would take you away. Farewell, May. I'll lay flowers on your tombstone. In the countless golden red particles that were flying, Golden Crow Princess' eyes became extremely firm. May, elope with me. Hello. What kind of elopement is this? Obviously, you are going to capture me. Yunshi looked helplessly at Golden Crow Princess. Who can stop this little sun? If the furnace exploded in her hands, all of the White Lotus sword domain will be done for. Let us go home. Golden Crow Princess opened her small wings, cheered heartily and shouted, May. Let's go to my egg together. Boom! A red pillar of light rose to the sky and easily tore up the protection system of the White Lotus Sword Palace. In a twinkling of an eye, it flew to a higher place than the Sky Tower, heading for the battlefield of gods, where Golden Crow Princess' real body was. It's much too high. This was the first time for Yunxi to come to this altitude. Although he had entered the battlefield of gods, he was teleported to that place. He couldn't see such a landscape during that event. In the air at 100,000 meters, even the atmosphere became thinner. The vast mountains and oceans became as thin as the outline in the landscape painting. Is this the world in the eyes of fantastic creatures? Looking down from here, the White Lotus Sword domain is really small. Yunxi even saw the water god's fantasy island, where located in the center of the eye of the storm and surrounded by white mist. After releasing the power of the furnace, Golden Crow Princess got rid of gravity, flying to the battlefield of gods created by Hura's god power. In the burning battlefield of gods, a beautiful golden red bird was happily spreading its wings, waiting for the return of its incarnation. The next thing she would do was to activate the coordinates her mom, West Queen, inscribed on her body, so that she could bring Yunxi back to the Kunlun god's domain. As Golden Crow Princess imagined that she could be with May every day for thousands of years, she couldn't help but sing. While Golden Crow Princess was confident that everything would be going on as she wished, an ice blue sword cut open the dividing line between the sky and the earth and hit her forehead. Ah! Golden Crow Princess was stunned. It seemed that it took only a second, but was also as long as 1,000 years. When she regained consciousness, Yunxi had disappeared from her arms without any trace or sign. Who is it? Who stole my May? Golden Crow Princess incarnation and true body instantly merged into one, making an angry roar in the sky. The order in the battlefield of gods was totally messed up. The fire of the sun burst out from the furnace, Drive, which was more unbridled than it had just been in the battle with Hura. This time, its power was really going to be used to destroy the world. You can't take him away. The guardian of the Sky Tower, Lilibet, looked at the angry Golden Crow Princess indifferently. In her arms, sweat streamed down Yunxi's face. Who are you? Do you want to grab May with me? Golden Crow Princess stared at Lilibet in a murderous manner. Go back. Calm down, no one can violate the rules. Golden Crow Princess battle with Hura before was allowed by the rule of the sacrificial ceremony, so Lilibet wouldn't put her hands in it. However, it was another thing that Golden Crow Princess wanted to take away the Master of Star Go by coercive means. Lilibet, the guardian of order, would not allow this to happen. Golden and red flames were burning, and pillars of fire rose into the sky one after another, causing numerous firestorms to rage between heaven and earth. The basic particles of yellow, red, blue turned into giant spirals one after another, spinning at high speed. 7-color lightning that never appeared in the White Lotus Sword domain before jumped happily among the clouds. Colorful light penetrated through the battlefield of gods, illuminating the sky of the White Lotus Sword domain. A new sun suddenly appeared in the dusk of the White Lotus Sword domain. That was Golden Crow Princess, that was the little sun from the Kunlun god's domain. However, the area covered by this sun was completely confined by a circle of ice-blue brilliance in the upper part of the White Lotus Sword Palace. All lightning and storms stopped abruptly at one line, as if it was a field God had designated for them, and they could not take a step past. The edge of the lightning seemed so magnificent, its numerous branches seemed to extend beyond the sky of the White Lotus Sword domain, but the ice-blue wall completely blocked these lightning storms, standing as an unbreakable wall. Give my May back. Give my May back. Give my May back. Watching Yunxi being snatched away from her arms, Golden Crow Princess lost her sanity. As the princess of the Kunlun god's domain and the youngest daughter of West Queen, she had never experienced such a setback. Never. Even the Sunwalker, Hura, had to run away in the face of her. Who would have thought that the guardian of the door would suddenly stop her? I decline. Lilibet looked indifferently at Golden Crow Princess. Apart from May, Golden Crow Princess could bring away anyone. After all, perhaps no one would refuse this opportunity to go to the Kunlun god's domain. However, May was different. His real identity wasn't inferior to Golden Crow Princess. From the moment he obtained the title, the Master of Star Go, he had become a signboard of the Sky Tower. Naturally, Lilibet wouldn't turn a blind eye to it if anyone dared to kidnap him. Even though Golden Crow Princess was the youngest daughter of West Queen, apparently, her value wasn't as high as the Master of Star Go. If Yunshi was really willing to leave with Golden Crow Princess, she wouldn't interfere with this kind of thing. But if Golden Crow Princess wanted to take him away by force, she would stop her. You're bringing about your own destruction. Golden Crow Princess burst into a rage and turned back to her true form, a golden red bird. She cried into the air. No one can rob me of my thing. The battlefield of gods melted once again. The earth's crust was easily burnt through by the fire of the sun, and then turned into a sea of lava. Like the real ocean, the lava ocean was vast and boundless. As far as the eyes could see, white heat lava bubbles rolled up and sprayed out, bursting into flames. Yunshi's handmade furnace was 100% compatible with Golden Crow Princess. Even though Golden Crow Princess had never fought as a Sunwalker before, she could easily liberate the power of the furnace. Putting the small furnace in her mouth, Golden Crow Princess' anger could even affect the operation of the White Lotus Sword domain. This was the power of the Great Sun. I want to burn you to death. Golden Crow Princess waved her wings, and numerous golden red flame spiral arrows appeared behind her. As long as these arrows fell on the ground of the White Lotus Sword domain, any of them could cause a large-scale volcanic eruption and eventually trigger a world-class natural storm. At this moment, there were more than 10 million flame arrows that were locking on Lilibet's body. Those arrows' power could destroy 1,000 White Lotus Sword domain in the blink of an eye. Lilibet raised her ice blue sword. The compass pointer on the sword handle began to move and reflected endless fantastic scenes on the surface of the compass. Die! Golden Crow Princess unleashed a world-class attack. More than 3,000 golden arrows shot at Lilibet, blotted out the sky and covered up the earth. Golden Crow Princess showed no mercy at all. She was trying to evaporate Lilibet from the world using this attack. As for May, her sun power would not hurt him. He was holding the other furnace, SN Drive, so he was actually immune to the fire of the sun. This was also the reason why Golden Crow Princess dared to launch such a destructive attack. I come from far away, go to the unfathomable future, order, symmetry to all things. Lilibet's ice blue sword shivered and sounded in her hand, and the compass on the sword handle pointed swiftly to Golden Crow Princess. The Sword of Order. The compass instantly turned to a strange golden color, reflecting the color of stars. An ice blue light surpassed the river of time, ceasing all the arrows of the sun as if they were nothing and straightly pierced through Golden Crow Princess' body. Golden Crow Princess' eyes slowly opened wide with a look of disbelief. The next moment, everything was paused. All of the battlefield of gods froze. From the lava waves rising from the ground to the sky to the golden red particles dancing on Golden Crow Princess' wings, everything stagnated. Go back, this place is not where you should stay. Holding Yunshi, who was totally flabbergasted, in her arms, Lilibet held the Sword of Order and walked to Golden Crow Princess, gently pointing the sword tip on her forehead. Go back to where you come from. Forget the things that happened today, little Sun Princess. The next second, everything began to rush. As if lost time was suddenly released from its cage, countless visible fragments exploded and blasted around Golden Crow Princess. I'll be back. She made a terrifying roar, and her whole body was absorbed by the fragments and disappeared little by little from the battlefield of gods. This was expulsion. Her body was returning to where she came from under the guidance of Lilibet's power. This was also the last step in the sacrificial ceremony, sending the god away. However, the performer was replaced by Lilibet. Golden Crow Princess couldn't resist the rules of the sacrificial ceremony, so that Lilibet could drive her away by a brandish of her sword. In the face of the guardian of the Sky Tower, the young Golden Crow Princess finally paid the price and was taught a lesson. Lilibet used her method to tell her that power wasn't everything. There was a great distance between them in the use of their own powers. Thank you. We should leave now also. I'm afraid that our little princess will make a tremendous row after returning to the Kunlun god's domain. The two fantastic creatures who also came from the Kunlun god's domain, Yinglong and Bifang, stopped hiding and appeared in front of Lilibet. They bowed to her and then disappeared from the battlefield of gods again. As the guardian of the Sky Tower, Lilibet protected the orders of the Sky Sword God's domain from the age of the twilight of the gods. She deserved their salute. Her age was even older than most of the fantastic creatures in the Kunlun God's domain, and she had begun to guard the Sky Tower before the Sky Sword God's domain was formed. If it wasn't because she had to follow an unknown rule, protecting the Sky Tower and the Sky Sword God's domain, she would have been able to become a real god long, long ago. Amongst all Sky Swords, she was probably the most special one. She never interfered in the daily life of the Sky Sword God's domain. But once anyone dared to break the order in the Sky Sword God's domain, she would appear and prevent the worst situation from happening. Go back. Here. It's not a place you should come now, you can come back after you reach the legend rank. After expelling Golden Crow Princess back to the Kunlun god's domain, Lilibet lowered her head and looked down at Yunxi. Thank you. Lilibet, Yunxi really didn't know what he should say now. Being held tightly in her arms, Yunxi could even clearly feel the arc and softness of her breasts. To Yunxi's surprise, her body wasn't as cold as her ice-blue sword at all, but very soft and comfortable, as if he had returned to his mother's embrace. He had never had this feeling from any girls of the Starwing Knights. In the face of the girls of the Starwing Knights, he always had a feeling that he needed to protect them. But in the face of Lilibet, he longed for her protection. And she did have that power for protection. Yunxi didn't understand how she could freeze time in the battlefield of gods before. Maybe that was the power of order. The power to balance everything and turn everything around. To you, you still have a long life, your life has just begun, don't worry. I'll protect you. Rarely did she say a lot of words, except for this time. After that, she let go of Yunxi and gave him a gentle push. The next moment, Yunxi was surrounded by countless silver-blue particles. It's so warm. The silver-blue particles weren't cold at all. Yunxi watched his body falling toward the earth, but he was not afraid of that at all. Because Lilibet's power was still protecting him. Under her protection, even if an attack that could destroy the world came, it couldn't harm him. That was the order she held, the gentle and kind power. Under her cold appearance, her will was more firm and powerful than anyone else. For what reason do you keep guarding this world? What is this world in your eyes? Why do you have to stay in that silent world, silently looking at the aggregation of the Sky Sword God's domain? Lilibet, what a nice name. It was so great to meet you in the dream. Go back. Lilibet reached out her hand and gave Yunxi a gentle push. The next second, Yunxi began to fall down to the earth from the battlefield of gods. The battlefield of gods finally fulfilled its mission. It splintered like a mirror. Instead, an ice-blue portal stood over above the sky of the White Lotus Sword domain. It was the door of the Sky Tower, the door connected all sword domains in the sky sword god's domain. In the next thousands of years, she would still stand on that beautiful and silent beach as ever, guarding the order of the Sky Tower and the Sky Sword God's domain. Compared with Golden Crow Princess flying speed, the speed of Yunshi falling from the sky was much slower, but it was more realistic. Boundless land, mountains, and oceans appeared in Yunshi's vision and became clearer and clearer in his eyes. His body fell at a high speed, which even caused sparks in the atmosphere. It was impossible for his hero-ranked body to withstand the impact of falling directly from the sky to the ground. However, Yunshi was not afraid of it at all, because his body was being surrounded by silver-blue particles. Being protected by Lilibet's power was the best. He only felt the joy of going back home. The wet sea breeze and the familiar, beautiful scenery all seemed to say, "Welcome back," to Yunshi. Oh, he knew where the sense of familiarity came from now, because it was indeed the scenery he knew. Some hidden power in his body stretched out comfortably, releasing a happy atmosphere. The maid's dress automatically disappeared in the air and naturally became another set of clothes. On his face, a silver mask appeared, and above his head, a crown also naturally condensed. It was the mask belonging to the White Emperor. It was the crown belonging to the Water God's bride. The magnificent ruby. The clear sapphire. The profound black obsidian. The sacred moonstone. The colorful diamond. The golden crystal. The silver ice crystal. And a pair of ambers, which looked like a living sailing jellyfish and the butterfly of death. All the gemstones were shining, reflecting each other's color. The White Emperor was back. One sailing jellyfish after another flew in from all directions, and fell happily from the sky to the sea together with Yunshi. They were singing softly, praising the only emperor in this world. Even the infinite love from millions of people, it wouldn't be more than the love you have granted to him. You have the whole world, but you only love this boy. Even though the world would end in misfortune, you would only offer this boy honor and hope. Welcome back, bride of the great water god. Boom! With a loud sound, Yunshi dropped on the surface of the sea like a meteorite falling from the sky. One sailing jellyfish after another happily chased after Yunshi falling into the sea. The pressure of the sea water was nothing for these fantastic creatures. More than that, after Yunshi fell into the sea, the butterflies of death also came and followed behind Yunshi together with sailing jellyfishes. Oh, it's so deep, it's so deep. Is this the deep sea? Yunshi watched his body falling uncontrollably in a straight line, and within a few breaths, he had fallen into the deepest and darkest side of the sea where he couldn't even see his fingers. After a while, the sailing jellyfishes also arrived near him. Fortunately, these jellyfishes were self-luminescent so he could barely see the environment around him through the cold lights from the bodies of the sailing jellyfishes. It was probably already several kilometers deep under the surface of the sea, but there were a variety of unusual species living here. Two kinds of marine life inhabited this sea area. They were either very flat, adjusting the internal and external pressure with a soft body, or developed towards another direction, having a huge body in size. Among them, there were very few creatures that were also self-luminescent, for example, a numbfish whose body was wrapped in azure lightning not far away from Yunshi. Why did Yunshi know the name of this creature? Because one of his 1,000,000 brides was the princesses of the numbfish race. Diving to the deeper sea area, Yunshi saw more rare races that hardly appeared in front of human beings. If it wasn't because he had married the princesses of all these races, he would never know that there were so many strange creatures inhabiting such a deep sea area. Lilibet's power was still protecting him and it didn't seem like it would disappear anytime soon. 10,000 meters, 20,000 meters, Yunshi had never entered such a deep sea area. Was the sea so deep in the past? Yunxi remembered that when he erected the 4 towers in the 4 corners of the water god's world, the sea wasn't so deep at that time and the number of the species that habitat here were far fewer than the number they were now. He had a feeling that this was growing, not only the scale of the world, but also the strength of the creatures in this world. Along the way, Yunxi has seen dozens of powerful hero-ranked deep-sea monsters. In the battle with Shay Alongness, he didn't see any of them at that time. They seem to have appeared overnight in this deep-sea area. Looking at the sailing jellyfishes and butterflies of death around him, Yunxi could be sure that this wasn't just his imagination. The number of the 2 unique fantastic creatures around him had become 2 times more than what he knew when he just left the water god's world. Moreover, there were still more sailing jellyfishes flying to this place from all directions, while more and more butterflies of death emerged from the deepest darkness. The sailing jellyfish represented life. The butterfly of death represented death. The 2 kinds of fantastic creatures had different postures, but they had the same beauty. They were the symbols of the power of the water god's world. They were proof of Hydra's identity as a god. Their number was increasing, which meant that the aggregate of the water god's fantasy island was expanding. It wasn't his imagination, it was because Hydra was recovering her strength step by step after waking up from the long dream. She was the world, so any changes that happened to her body would naturally change the world at the same time. As she recovered, a lot of creatures who disappeared during the sleeping period had emerged into this world again. After protecting this broken world for thousands of years, Hydra finally harvested the fruits that belonged to her. As the bride of the water god, Yunxi had also become one of the harvesters. After dropping into the water god's world, he was accepted and embraced by this world like a child who just returned to his mother's arms. The world was welcoming its child, the little white emperor. Yunxi didn't know how deep he had sunk into the deep sea. He could not even tell whether it was 80,000 meters deep or 100,000 meters deep. In a word, it had exceeded the limit that could be observed. At last, the deep sea races around him had become scarce once again. Everything had become quiet. Only the transparent sailing jellyfishes and the butterflies of death still accompanied him. Finally, Yunxi arrived at the end. Ah! His body seemed to have touched some very soft thing. The silver-blue particles that were protecting him dispersed without a sound, then Yunxi's whole body was plunged into a soft and familiar breath. There seemed to be a soft laugh echoed into his ear. It was the gaze of a great being, who opened her eyes quietly and was full of warm smiles on her face. Hydra, the water god. Yunxi naturally understood what this soft thing was. It was the source of Hydra's power, an endless ocean of blood. Here was the god world of Hydra, in other words, this was actually a part of Hydra's body. Perhaps there was no safer place in the White Lotus Sword domain than this place was for Yunxi. Lilibet had indeed thrown him into the safest shelter in the whole of the White Lotus Sword domain. Passing through a wide passage, Yunxi finally stood on the ground again. Here is, Yunxi looked doubtfully at the vast mountain range in front of him. In his sight, there were only mountains at the bottom of the sea, and the outlines of these mountains looked strange. From Yunxi's point of view, the mountains seemed to have their own life, releasing a mysterious and ancient atmosphere. Yunxi reacted with awe in the face of this holy land. But the next second, the sound of a hurricane whistling completely interrupted Yunxi's thought. Hiccup, oh! It was a tremor that was loud enough to trigger a small earthquake. All of the mountains rolled up, releasing earth-shattering shock waves. Yunxi's body was blown down. If it wasn't because the sailing jellyfishes around him blocked most of the shock waves for Yunxi, he still wouldn't be able to stand up. Can it be? It was not easy for Yunxi to control the mist in the air, but he was more shocked by the mountains in front of him. In the blink of an eye, the tremendous earthquake completely changed the shape of the mountains. The whole world was turned upside down. No, the earth wasn't being overturned. Stepping onto the fog created by the White Emperor's mask, Yunshi flew to the highest point of this unknown world, and finally witnessed the full view of the mountains. They weren't mountains, they were all parts of a giant creature's body. The giant creature turned over in its sleep, which triggered this earth-shattering disaster. And Yunshi actually knew who this giant creature was. It was the first fantastic creature who arrived at the water god's world, Ouroboros. But now, Ouroboros' body had grown to a size that was large enough to devour a star, so Yunshi didn't relate the mountains to the concept of living things at all. He remembered that before he left the water god's world, Ouroboros' body was only 1,000th the size of this mountain. Maybe this was Ouroboros' true body. When it first appeared in the sky above the water god's world, it shrank its body. Somehow, Yunshi thought that this might be the truth. As a strong fantastic creature, it wasn't surprising to know that Ouroboros had such a big body. Fantastic creatures were the favorites of the rules of the world, and some of them were even the incarnations of some certain rules. A human's common sense meant nothing to fantastic creatures. Yunshi's reasoning was soon proved to be true. In just a moment, the mountains changed their postures 3 times. Every combination of the mountains looked disorderly, but also seemed to contain some old, mysterious rules. Without exception, every change of Ouroboros' posture would lead to a catastrophe equivalent to a magnitude 9 earthquake. Shock waves alone could cause a doomsday scene. But for Ouroboros, it was just a normal rollover during sleep, and it didn't seem to sleep well at this moment. Hiccup, goo, ha, with these vague sounds, Ouroboros rolled over in its sleep. Not everyone had the luck to witness a fantastic creature's sleeping posture. Fortunately, Yunshi's body was equipped with the sailing jellyfish's robe, the White Emperor's mask, and the water god bride's crown. The 3 god weapons represented the blessing of the water god's world to him. Equipped with these god weapons, he could summon millions of mist souls and ask for the help of the 2 fantastic creatures, sailing jellyfish and butterfly of death. In this state, even if he had to face Shay Alongness again, he had the power to fight against her. Although he could only hold this fighting power in the water god's world, for now, it was enough. The earthquakes caused by Ouroboros could do no harm to him. Not only Ouroboros, but Yunshi also sensed a familiar aura from the end of the mountains. Compared to drunken Ouroboros, that aura was more scorching. Teacher Cassina. Yunshi looked at the end of the mountain in some surprise. He didn't expect that Teacher Cassina would also be here. Speaking of her, after he finished his 100 victories in the Sky Tower, he should report it to Teacher Cassina and return her identity to her. When he first entered the Starry Sky chessboard, he had no idea about how valuable this identity was. Until he finally found out that all his opponents were at the legend rank, he realized what a special gift it was. A legend-ranked person's identity. No one else could enjoy this treatment in the White Lotus Sword domain. Without Teacher Cassina's identity, he wasn't even qualified to step into the Sky Tower. Cassina must have great expectations for him, so she gave him her identity and let him go to take part in the competition on the Starry Sky chessboard. Without Teacher Cassina's help, he could never obtain the title, the Master of Star Go. Between the sky and earth, there was a tragic scream. Ouroboros suddenly made a painful howl as if it was being excruciatingly tortured by some invisible executioner. Why? Yunshi didn't know what he could do. Is there anything in this world could do harm to such a giant snake, a mountain-like fantastic creature? It hurts. It hurts. Anyone, give me water. Ouroboros rolled over painfully. If it wasn't because it was in Hydra's body, the damage caused by it could already destroy a mortal world. Water. 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 I see, oh. Oh my, drink some water and get up. Somehow, Cassina's voice sounded a little distorted, and then a light column shot up to the sky. A big mouth appeared in the sky and tens of millions of tons of seawater fell from the sky, bombarding on Ouroboros' lifeless body. Ouch! 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 Ouroboros made a dying cry and rolled over the ground and began to smoke all over its body. Toxic gas. Yunshi smelled the horror toxin that was spreading in the air. The toxic gas could kill millions of people at once, but he had a familiar feeling when smelling it. He knew that he would not be harmed by the toxic gas. Because this toxic gas was from the master of this world, Hydra. It was the poison from Hydra that pervaded in the air at this moment. Just a drop of Hydra's poison could kill a group of the strongest hero-ranked people. If a few drops of her poison transformed into toxic gases, they could even wipe out all the living beings in a sword domain. However, there seemed to be something else mixed up in the toxic gas. Is it the aroma of wine? Yunshi sniffed and analyzed the bouquet in the air. As a hero-ranked baker, he could judge all kinds of food, including wine. After all, there was also wine bread such as red wine bread and rum toast. However, because people in the White Lotus Sword domain didn't like to eat bread mixed with wine, Yunshi hadn't really made this kind of bread before. Ingredients: wine brewed from an unknown liquid, highly poisonous. Level: unknown. Brewing time: unknown. Effectiveness: very horrible poisonous wine, no hero-ranked beings can drink. Not for humans. He couldn't analyze out too many things. The only thing he knew was that this kind of wine was extremely poisonous and could poison millions of people with a single drop. If you made bread with this poisonous wine, he could easily kill any hero-ranked person. After drinking such a poisonous wine, Ouroboros could still struggle to look for water. Are all fantastic creatures' bodies so strong? Goo! Ah! Ouroboros uttered a tearful groan and still murmured, again, one more drink. Good, one more drink. It seemed that Cassina was jubilantly pouring wine for the dying Ouroboros. Yunshi curiously controlled the mist, flying to the end of the mountain, which was actually the location of Ouroboros' head. Not surprisingly, he saw teacher Cassina and an unknown woman there. Although he had never seen this mature woman, who wore only a transparent robe on her body, Yunshi subconsciously knew that she was one of Hydra's best friends, the real body of the mountains under their feet, Ouroboros. Her whole body was wet, and under the wet robe, her beautiful body was clear and distinct. The wet hair sticking on the skin made her look more charming. Her eyes looked as if there were broken stars flashing in her pupils. Although her face looked feeble, her appearance showed a decadent beauty. In her hand, she was holding a glass of bloody wine, and she was trying to drink it. At this moment, she was so drunk that she couldn't even hold the glass of wine. She splashed most of the wine on her fragrant, smooth, round, firm, snow-white and delicate peaks. The bright red poisonous wine dropped on her snow-white skin. It looked like a magic painting that Yunshi could barely break his eyes away from. Whoop! What a waste! Ouroboros looked at the poisonous wine falling onto her breasts. She directly pulled open her robe and gently stretched out her tongue, licking the liquor that hadn't yet completely fallen down from her skin. The poisonous wine that could kill millions of people shone brilliantly under Ouroboros' fragrant tongue. The beautiful scene was so seductive that Yunshi didn't know where to look at this time. On the opposite side of Ouroboros, Cassina was also drunk. Although she was not as drunk as Ouroboros, her flushed cheeks revealed her hazy state. Her brown slender legs had long been free from the hindrance of shoes and socks. On the round and beautiful toes and the bows of the feet, they were full of bright red wine. A few drops of bright red wine fell from Cassina's lips to the instep of her feet, attracting Ouroboros' eyes. Wine. Ouroboros licked her lips and kissed Cassina's smooth ankle. Cassina's beautiful toes, soles, foot arch. As long as they were stained with wine beads, Ouroboros licked them all clean and didn't let go of a drop of wine. Looking at the beautiful bare feet, Yunshi's heart suddenly beat faster. You're too drunk. Ouroboros. Cassina drank another glass of poisonous wine without batting an eyelid, then kicked Ouroboros with her toes. Let me die. Ouroboros sank down beside Cassina's ankle with a lifeless look. Even with such a decadent look, her body still naturally emitted a seductive charm. Hot, after drinking another glass of poisonous wine, it seemed that Cassina had also reached a critical point of her drinking capacity. She stabbed her sword, the sands of time, into the ground. Cassina shook her head and was going to take off her clothes to dissipate heat. Anyway, they were in Hydra's secret wine store. Apart from her and Ouroboros, there were no other people. Ah! Yunshi stared at teacher Cassina skillfully taking off her clothes. Why are you so skillful? Compared with Ouroboros' morbid state, Cassina's skin showed a different beauty, healthy and flexible. Moreover, she had a pair of long legs that could make anyone envy. Looking at the snow-white skin and brown skin, the world in Yunshi's eyes suddenly became blurred, and he vaguely heard a slight laugh from nowhere. Yunshi looked dully at Cassina, who was slowly taking off her clothes. There was still some liquor on her skin, which made his mouth dry and almost couldn't believe his eyes. He knew that teacher Cassina indeed loved to drink, however, he never saw her getting drunk before. He saw it with his own eyes that even after drinking 10 barrels of wine, teacher Cassina's face only became blushed a little. She would never be so drunk that she had to take off her clothes to dissipate heat. Is it because of the wine? Yunshi smelled the bouquet of the wine in the air. It was indeed a good wine that even his hero-ranked food identification capability couldn't identify. Think about it carefully, even Ouroboros, whose body was as large as a star, was drunk after drinking the wine. It wasn't surprising to see teacher Cassina also getting drunk. No wonder that when he returned from the Sky Tower, he didn't find teacher Cassina. She actually came here to drink. Did she forget that he had to report to her about his 100 victories in a row on the starry sky chessboard? No. That can't be. Yunshi shook his head and ran to Cassina, stopping her from taking off her bra. White Emperor. Cassina squinted her eyes and raised her finger to shake between her eyes, as if she was measuring the distance between herself and Yunshi. Teacher Cassina, you are drunk. Yunshi accidentally touched Cassina's smooth back, which made his heart suddenly beat faster. Drink. Oh, it seems that I drank too much. Cassina touched Yunshi's forehead and pinched his face. Why do I feel like you have grown up? She asked with a puzzled look. Really? Yunshi looked at his own body. He couldn't find any parts that had grown up. Silly boy. I mean, you have become stronger. Cassina took a deep breath. Instantly, the alcohol in her whole body was forced to be dissipated bit by bit. This was a waste. For legend-ranked beings, only very few materials could affect the states of their bodies. Taking Cassina as an example, although she liked wine, all wines that hadn't been stored more than 100 years were actually as flavorless as water. No matter how good the brewing material was and how high the grade of the winemaker was, if there was no trace of time in the wine, she couldn't taste anything from the wine. To great existences such as Cassina and Ouroboros, only the wine that had been stored more than 1,000 years could make them feel physically and mentally pleasant. And the wine that could make them get drunk was even rarer in the endless gods' domains. Amongst all the wines in the world, Hydra's poisonous wine, which was brewed with her own venom and had been stored thousands of years, could be called the highest-ranked enjoyment in the endless gods' domains. Otherwise, Ouroboros and Cassina wouldn't be so drunk that they forgot the time to go back and almost could not wake up. Hydra wasn't just a water god, she was also a legend-ranked winemaker. Even back to the age of the gods, this was a rare career. Only the strongest legend-ranked beings could enjoy the poisonous wine made of her own blood and venom. Cassina had come to Hydra's treasury to look for something useful for Yunshi's future. As a result, she encountered Ouroboros and was tempted by her words, sneaking into Hydra's wine cellar together. Fortunately, compared to Ouroboros, Cassina's drinking capacity was big. After stealing and drinking countless barrels of Hydra's poisonous wine, she was still not totally drunk, so that Yunshi could awaken her. Good. That's all right. After dispelling about half of the alcohol in her body, Cassina's eyes became clear again. As for why she didn't dispel all the alcohol in her body, because it was Hydra's legend-ranked poisonous wine. It would be a great pity if she dispelled all of it. She clearly knew that she may not have another chance to sneak into Hydra's wine cellar and steal her wine again. White Emperor. Have you completed the challenge in the Sky Tower? When Cassina wasn't drunk, she was a very serious and responsible teacher. At the first moment, she asked Yunshi about his test in the Sky Tower. Thank you, Teacher Cassina, I have successfully achieved 100 victories in a row. Yunshi proudly stretched out his hand and showed her the 2 shining soul jades in his palm. I won 2 soul jades as my reward. Cassina looked cheerfully at the 2 soul jades. Soul Jade of Innocence, the owner can store his memory in the jade. Even if the owner's existence was totally wiped off from the universe, his memory in the Soul Jade wouldn't disappear. Soul Jade of Holy Light. Put on this Soul Jade and you can obtain a light-type talent. Good, he did well. He deserves to be my disciple. Not only is he physically gifted, but he is also very lucky. Soul Jades has only a 10% possibility to appear to be a reward. He could actually obtain 2 top-class Soul Jades as the reward. Wait a minute, 2 top-class Soul Jades. Cassina showed a doubtful expression on her face. In the Battle Gods Championship contest, everyone would get a reward after achieving 100 victories in a row. Cassina had achieved countless victories in the Sky Tower, but she only obtained Soul Jades as rewards several times. Yunshi not only obtained 2 Soul Jades as rewards, but also both of them were top-class Soul Jades. It's incredible. White Emperor, how many times have you achieved 100 victories in a row? Just once, I achieved 100 victories in a row on the Starry Sky chessboard and chose the 2 Soul Jades as my reward. Yunshi innocently looked at Cassina. The Starry Sky chessboard? You went to the Starry Sky chessboard? Cassina was speechless. Yes, and I also got the title of the Master of Star Go.0. Yunshi was an honest child. At least, he had no intentions of lying in front of Cassina. The Master of Star Go. Cassina suddenly wondered if she had been drunk and slept in Hydra's wine cellar for several years. Is the Starry Sky chessboard a place for any people with a healthy mental state? What equipment did you use? Cassina was trying hard to think about what equipment could help her disciple to participate in the game of the Starry Sky chessboard. However, although she had won innumerable legend-ranked equipment in the Battle Gods Championship contest, she really didn't know which equipment could be useful in this situation. Her disciple hadn't even stepped across the door of the hero rank yet. How could he enter the Starry Sky chessboard? Equipment. Does it exist? Yunshi looked at his teacher innocently. He had never entered the Battle Gods Championship contest, so he didn't know that his teacher had prepared countless legend-ranked equipment for him there. For example, there were weapons called Infinity Edge. After equipping 6 Infinity Edges, they would combine into a killing suit, which could make the equipper's critical strike chance reach 120%. Or after equipping 6 Black Cleavers, the Black Cleaver Alliance suit, could reduce your opponent's defense to 0. 6 Thornmails could combine into a bloody barrier suit, which could reflect back the opponent's attack with 180% magic power. 6 Frozen Hearts could combine into a Ice Crown suit, which had an ice-sealed aura that could reduce the attack speed of nearby enemies by 99%. In addition to these, there was also a Firestone suit, made of 6 boots of mobility could let the equipper flash around the earth. Any of these suits were rare legend-ranked equipment. If Yun-Shik equipped them all, he would be literally invincible in the Sky Tower. That's why Cassina was confident that even a newbie like Yun-Shik could achieve 100 consecutive victories in the Battle Gods Championship contest. However, she didn't expect that he would go to the Starry Sky chessboard. She thought carefully and remembered that there were indeed equipment that could increase the wearer's intelligence. Are you sure that you didn't use the Little Red Riding Hood suit? Cassina vaguely remembered that amongst all the suits she had, there was indeed a Little Red Riding Hood suit, made by combining 6 Banksy's Death Caps. A Banksy's Death Cap could increase magic power by 120 points and raise mental power by 35%. And after combining 6 Banksy's Death Caps, the Little Red Riding Hood suit had 3 effects. 1. This suit can increase the equipper's magic power by 1000 points and raise the equipper's mental power by 500%. 2. The equipper will be transformed into a 14-year-old golden-haired girl who can cause 3 times hit to any dark-type creatures. 3. The equipper's attributes to werewolves are weakened and the attributes of vulnerability to wild animals are acquired. Warning: the girl with Little Red Riding Hood needs to keep their distance from the uncaged wrath of Zon. Cassina had experimented with this suit before. After wearing this suit, the equipper would automatically trigger the transformation effect and gain powerful magic power. Moreover, it was a rare equipment that had 0 requirement for the equipper's rank. However, only a pure girl can equip this suit, and once you put it on, you couldn't take it off for a lifetime unless you had found a more powerful suit than this suit. That was to say, if you were chosen by this suit, you would become a 14-year-old golden-haired girl for a lifetime. Therefore, this suit also had a nickname, 14 Years Old Forever. It was said that it was made by a god in the ancient age. In addition to the Little Red Riding Hood suit, that god also made a lot of other equipment based on his fantasies, such as glass shoes with infinite melody, crystal crown of eternal sleeping, pumpkin carriage shuttling the world, and 7 matches of mortal prayer. No. Yun-Shi looked at his teacher in confusion. After he entered the Sky Tower, he went directly to the Starry Sky chessboard. Where was the equipment from? Oh, can it be, you didn't go to the Battle Gods Championship contest? Looking at her disciple's confused expression, Cassina finally discovered the truth. She seemed to have forgotten to tell him that he should go to the Battle Gods Championship contest after entering the Sky Tower. For her, it was common sense to go straight to the Battle Gods Championship contest. Besides the Battle Gods Championship contest, where else in the Sky Tower does she need to go? It seemed that her disciples didn't have this common sense. Well, I took part in the test of the Starry Sky chessboard and won 100 times. I didn't plan to stop after obtaining 100 victories, but the Sky Tower told me that I had obtained the title, the Master of Star Go. Yun-Shi honestly told his teacher everything that happened before. Starry Sky chessboard. 100 victories in a row. A drop of sweat fell down from Cassina's forehead. Again, she wondered how long she had been drinking. How many years have passed? Even my disciple has obtained the title, the Master of Star Go. The Master of Star Go is a title that isn't inferior to my own title of the Battle God. If people knew that the new Master of Star Go is such a little guy, they will, well, every force in the endless God's domains will want to grab my little disciple away from me. Well, White Emperor, how many people know that you are the Master of Star Go? Cassina couldn't help but pinch Yun-Shi's cheeks again. This pleasant surprise was so great that it almost became a scare. Apart from you, only the guardian of the Sky Tower knows it. That's good. Remember, you must keep it a secret before you reach the legend rank. Cassina hesitated for a while and warned her lovely disciple, otherwise, there will be many terrible elder sisters that will try to talk to you and try to take you away. By the way, this wasn't a lie. If Yunshi's identity was exposed, countless forces would try to obtain him at all costs. The secret of the stars was still a great temptation to countless legend-ranked beings. You're tuning in to the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.